Austin, you good? Everyone ready? Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
All right, let's call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We're going to start with a salute to the flag. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of July 25th, 2022 is available by call and phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a scheduled meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2022-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 6, 2022. Posted on the borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the borough clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Chris McKee. Here. Cole. Here. Hodge. Here. McHugh.
Here.
Net. Here. Rodriguez.
Here. Thank you. Moving along, workshop session. Request from Gontran Dekiak, 444 River Road, to amend his non-domestic animal license. I see that Mr. Dekiak is here. Does anyone want to say anything on this?
Would actually like to
Would
hear
you like to hear from Mr.
Dekiak
Dekiak?
first.
Mr. Dekiak, can you please? Thank you. So I see that you're requesting an amendment to your non-domestic animal license. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time today. So I have, as you know, license for years. Recently, another citizen, another person in this town had to give me the chicken, basically to the election way. So it happens that I am above my limit of 5 chickens. So either I have to get rid of the chickens or extend my permit to more than 5 chickens. Requesting to extend my limit of 5 chickens.
Okay, with that, I'll open up to questions from anyone in the council that wants to ask Mr. Dekiak a question. Starting over on Councilwoman Chris McKee.
Sure, I can start. Thank you for being here. As you're, I'm sure aware, there's been some concerns from the neighboring property. So just so I'm clear and the rest of the council is clear, you have a shared driveway with no barrier.
Yes, we have. So I've been in that property for 20 years. Somebody has moved next door and shares a little driveway.
Okay, so then I'm somewhat familiar with properties. Your driveway is the right, goes to the right.
So from the street, when you're
Yeah.
looking at the properties on the right.
Okay, and so then the chickens themselves are in a coop.
The furthest corner that you can think of, so the very far, very end.
Okay, and generally, I'm imagining, but tell me if I'm wrong, they're inside the coop?
So there's roof fencing. Okay?
Uh-huh,
So there is a mesh fence, which is entirely closed, which is relatively big, which there are little bit that is cats and dogs that need chickens and animals also. So that is for the night, basically, I'm entirely protected.
okay,
Or when I'm traveling, or for whatever reason, when I'm fixing the fence, for example, they stay there. There's a second set of fence which is that I built twice to reinforce it.
Okay.
The second set is delimited basically, I would say from here to the water there, that basically is an enclosure where the animals can be. Okay.
Okay.
If ever I want to work on the fence or get them access to the grass, I have a portable fence that I can actually install in my garden
Okay.
so that they are comfortable.
Okay.
They free fence.
Okay. And do they, I'm gathering from the nature of the neighbors' complaints is that the chickens are outside of the fences and roaming.
So there, we can go into the details, but the cases where it happened are really rare. And
Okay.
what can happen is, when I let them out of the little fence, okay, I put them in the second enclosure.
Right.
But if one is on the other, one there is two enclosures, one is on the other side of the garage. If ever an animal has passed by, we have deer, has broken that fence, I can't see from where I am. So it is possible that some of the animals sometimes escape.
Okay.
But in terms of, how frequent that happens, in the space of 2 years, I think it may have happened twice.
Okay.
So we are talking about very limited cases.
Okay.
I really pay attention to bringing the animals under control and to avoid that they go to my neighbor's home.
Okay. And then do you have to enlarge the coop at all to accommodate additional chickens?
No, because the coop I built the coop so that they have a lot of space.
Okay.
I care of the animals. Okay, so they have
I don't have
The
any,
coop was made for probably for.
okay. I don't have any other questions right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Neff? No? I actually have a question. You mentioned that someone in town left and they left you with the chickens.
Yeah.
Did they have a non-domestic animal license for the chickens? Okay.
Was it Mrs. Garrett? She's the
Only other person that
on
has.
River Road that has them, who I'm aware moved at the end of last year. There's somebody on Dartmouth, but she's fine.
Okay. I just gotta say, I have no doubt that you don't have bad intentions here, but if I was sharing a driveway with you as well, and there were chickens that weren't to exceed 5, and it seems like from reading the minutes, I wasn't here at the time, that the license was provided to you with the express written intent that you could not exceed 5 chickens.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you're before us today is because a complaint was made because they got out and someone witnessed that there's more than 5 chickens. I'm not sure you would be before us asking for this additional permit.
Well, the renewal would have happened in September, so that was at the time that we had the first.
Okay. I do have some concern here. I mean, are you looking to do this for farming purposes? Okay, so is there a reason that you need to go to 5 to 10? Other than she had to move out and she left them there? I mean, is there a reason you want the 5 additional chickens?
So right now I don't have 10, I have 9, okay? Do I won't go further? No, I'm very happy. I tried, if I could reduce them because it's not necessarily to have more. So the purpose was the educational aspect for my young kids at the start of COVID. Happens that it's an animal that has a short life cycle, so you can see the cycle of life in the space of a few months. I can't have a cat, I can have a dog because I'm allergic. Rabbits do not lay a lot of chicken, a lot of eggs. So, it's a small animal that is really easy to manage.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Councilwoman Couch?
Yep, I do have a couple of questions. You said that it was extremely rare for the chickens to escape the coop. How many times did you say that happened?
So in the complaint, I think Mrs. Woods has mentioned several cases. They are not documented. I've counted real documented cases about 2. I can tell you, I don't want to go into further details, but the police station has told me that Mrs. Woods is considered, never had that expression before, an aggressive complaint. So, the cases are relatively rare. I mean, as soon as I get out and I'm aware, I immediately put them back in. It's not like I want them to put around. If they are around, it would be my grass because they remove ticks. It's good for them to do a bit of grass. But otherwise, they are not intended to be.
Okay, so your application was approved September 2020. And one of the conditions of that approval is that you received a waiver for the 5 chickens, and you also had to move the coop to accommodate accessory structure
So
setback.
the coop has been, so there's, what we call coop is either a mesh or a building. In that case, it was a building. The building was really close to the fence, okay? It's not really a building because I can move it, so I have moved that wood part further out, so I'm away from that vacant fence. So that was the.
Okay, and part of the responsibility on your part when you were granted this waiver is that every year you had to reapply for a waiver.
Well, I reapplied and I have a certain one, so obviously the application was on. I mean,
Okay,
I
but that was
remember-
that was only for 5 chickens.
Yes, so I have another permit for September 2021, which is in order.
Right,
Then it needs to put to the review in September 2022.
okay. And the last thing I want to say is I remember us having this conversation back then, and one of the questions that I asked you is what are the consequences if the chickens escape? And our borough attorney at the time said that your annual waiver could be revoked within 10 days notice, pending a council meeting if you don't comply.
So I just want to mention that I was building up 2 fences, but they were building a 3rd fence on top of it to prevent it.
Right,
So
but it didn't prevent it because they still escaped.
They are birds, they fly, so they can go above fences, even if I want to push them by. So they are very rare occasion, we're talking about 2 out of 2 years, so 2 days out of 720 days.
But that's not the point. The point is, they weren't supposed to escape at all.
Yeah, that's true, I'm asking a bit of tolerance because 718 days have been done correctly. And sometimes they have escaped if an animal break the fence or something that I'm not aware of.
But is that
So-
fair to your neighbor? The whole point was to protect your neighbor from having the chickens on the property. And one of her concerns was that one of her children would run over the
She
chickens.
doesn't have that concern.
Well,
what
it's
I'm-
documented she has that
No,
concern.
she does what she said. They should do it.
Well-
So let me explain. I think chickens are birds. And, you know, we have birds in our gardens all the time. We never have an issue with having birds in our garden. I think Mrs. Woods has an issue about the fact that they are my birds. And I don't want to, and I respect her, you know, I respect that she doesn't want to have the chickens in her property. And I'm doing a lot of efforts for that not to happen. But it's, as much as I respect it, it's only a few birds that have happened to be in her garden for a few seconds that I'm not immediately to run and bring them back. You know, it's not like I intentionally let those chickens run around for them to run around. I keep them and build 3 fences to make sure that they don't go away. So I've been accident, there have been exception, and I apologize for this. But, you know, it has happened. It's not a rule of general rule that those chickens run away.
Okay, but your agreement with the borough was that they weren't going to escape. No, well, 700 days, they only left twice. It was you were going to keep them on your property. That was your agreement.
But I tried my best effort, 99.9% was the case, especially with the exceptions out of my.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman McHugh?
Thank you, Mayor. No, my only main concern, which I think you actually touched upon, Mayor, was, you know, the fact that you expressly asked that it would remain at 5, and you gave your word yes. And then after the complaint, you're now basically asking for forgiveness for going over that when there was an agreement. You give your word that it wouldn't go above 5, and then there's a complaint, you get caught, and now you're asking for forgiveness. So,
So, I mean, I understand your point, you know, I was going to request an extension, but, you know, I understand that I was outside of my limit, if you want, but the extension was supposed to happen, the renewal was supposed to happen in September. So, it would have been the right time to do this.
Councilman Cole?
Thank you, Mayor.
When you had 5 chickens, did any of them get out? I know you now have 10 or 9. I don't know when the other 4 joined your coop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When you had 5 hens,
Yes,
did they get out?
the documented cases where it comes back to, I think, March and May, so I don't know how many chickens there were. I don't have the list.
When did you add the 4 new hens?
I think it was in April that my neighbor gave me the chickens temporarily, and then she lost her house, and so I had to go through that. So I don't know exactly when those chickens.
That's one of the questions I have.
And I just asked one more question. What's the limit in your mind? Like, what happens when a week from now, another neighbor drops off 3 chickens because they can't take care of them? Where's the line of, demarcation where we say, okay, no more? In your mind, when do we stop saying yes to chickens?
I have more chickens than I need right now.
Did anyone sign off on the coop?
Well,
I think so.
I mean, the animal
Okay.
control came to see the group, and I think they were very happy, even before I moved.
So my only thought is to make sure that at 5 hens, given the coop that was approved and the agreements that were put in place, that even with only 5 hens, it's not going to create an additional problem for the neighborhood.
I sent Nick the information. With this, at the time of approval, at the time of approval, our animal control officer at the time when we had the shared service with Fairbank went over and helped Mr. Duclac with location and how to keep them contained. And then with this new application, I forwarded to Nick just to make sure that he was still okay with that.
I have one additional question. How long do chickens live?
5, 6 years.
5, 6
5,
years.
7 years.
They're not free
Unless they're
range
predators,
chickens.
and then unfortunately there's mushroom.
I'm sorry?
Unless they are predators,
Yes.
and they have a good tendency, they have much of the rest.
I was just gonna add, these are not free range chickens.
No.
They stay in their chicken yard with their chicken
They
coop.
have an area which is closed, okay, and there's a night area for either the child.
Except for when they get out. Okay.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this specific issue?
Mrs. Woods might be attending by Zoom. She's
Yeah,
not feeling
just
well.
briefly,
Mr. Reardon.
so I'm Tom Reardon. And
Mr. Dikia, you can,
how are you? How you doing?
Mr. Dikia, you can make some space there. Sorry.
Miss Woods is also on.
Yeah, I was only contacted because Ms. Woods has COVID and she didn't think she would be able to even be on the Zoom. So there was a request, could you submit something?
And what's your name, sir?
Tom Reardon.
Okay. Can you name your address for the record? Are you an attorney?
Yeah, I'm an
Thank you.
attorney with Reardon. And so I spoke with Ms. Woods today. I got some information. I don't know whether all of you received it, but I tried to document some of the issues. There's some of the photographs that were taken from 2020 when the permit or the waiver was granted. And actually, when you look at some of those criteria, these are tight spots. And they're really close to one another. And when you look at the reasoning for the number of I think there were 9 criteria, and most of them they were not even granting a waiver. But Ms. Woods is trying to be a good neighbor and said, sure, you can have the 5 chickens, which is what Mr. or her neighbor is supposed to comply with. So I just wanted to highlight the information. I believe Ms. Woods is on the Zoom. I don't know whether she's able or.
Yeah, Ms. Woods, if you'd like to speak to the governing body, you can raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Woods, you can speak.
My voice is a little weak because of the COVID, but as I said at the meeting when this was granted, I was okay with the 5 chickens. I did not want them on my property. And as Councilwoman Koch said, that was the agreement. I have documented certain times when the chickens have been on my property, and there have been many more. And now 10 chickens or 9 chickens, unacceptable. Because number one, they're not consistently contained, and they didn't come to me in, and I do think this is important, in each year when this comes up, if I could be notified. So I believe that it was extended in 2021. I didn't receive a notice that it was being extended, because I would have come and said they're not being contained. And then in the documentation that Mr. Reardon shared with the council, this was May 2nd, 2022, 6 chickens on my property, and there's no allowance for that. I'm agreeable to 5 chickens, but if the chickens escape, they must go. And I mean, this is just on a whole nother thing. As my brother said, and in the documentation, there's a picture. These are postage stamp properties. This is not a big multi-acre area, and it's just a nuisance. I don't want that many chickens around if they're freely coming onto the property. So my wish would be they have to stay on the property. If they vacate the property again, they have to go. And it cannot be more than 5. And how can we police it? Because we came here in 2020 because I called the town and said there are chickens roaming on my property. Are you allowed to have chickens? And there was no permit. It had to be given in arrears, begging for forgiveness rather than asking for permission. And we're back here again.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Woods. Anyone have any questions for Mrs. Woods?
No, thank you for taking the time. I hope you feel better soon.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's very important to me.
Yeah,
Will we, answer?
I think we just need to.
Does anyone, if you have a very brief statement, Mr. Vicky, I think we want to wrap this one up.
Yes, okay. I understand that. Mrs. Wood, my best wishes to you for your health. I just want to say I never complain about my neighbors, and I have plenty of reasons to complain, but I'm never going because I respect the good relations with our neighbors. I think plenty of stories of witches, different trees that are being cut, my own tree that are being cut. Noises, and I never fight about them because I respect the relations.
Does anyone want to make a motion to invest the animal license?
I just wanted to ask the council sort of what is, or maybe there's more information that I'm aware of, what's the criteria for not the number of chickens. I know at least one family that has only had about a dozen.
Chickens are prohibited.
So-
It's
I understand that.
prohibited. Oh, okay.
But for the ones that are allowed to have it, I know some who have more. So I guess my question is, what's the criteria for deciding if 5, 10, or 12 is
So,
appropriate?
Mayor, I could read the criteria to the council. We have.
Thank you.
So this is from code section 5-18.4, the application for waiver for keeping non-domestic animals. And it says, in examining whether or not a waiver should be granted, the following shall be considered. 1, the size of the property of the applicant where the animals are intended to be kept. 2, the distance between the location of where the non-domestic animal is intended to be kept on the applicant's property and the physical location of an adjacent property owner's home or dwelling unit. 3, whether the applicant's property is fenced so as to shield the non-domestic animals from the sight of surrounding property owners. 4, whether the non-domestic animals are kept in the applicant's home or remain primarily outside of the applicant's home. 5, the proposed non-domestic animal and its size, meaning whether it's a horse or a chicken, something of that nature. 6, the prior history of complaints filed against the applicant for violation of this section or previous ordinances pertaining to animal control. 7, the zoning district of the applicant's property. 8, whether the non-domestic animal serves some purpose other than desire to have a non-domestic animal as a pet. And 9, such other reasons as the mayor and council feel appropriate to the particular circumstance.
I think the reason for my question was because terms of their size and nuisance level between 5 and 9. I'm just trying to figure that out. I mean, just knowing that there's at least one other family I know that has more than that. So that's sort of my question.
My understanding is that the instance of nuisance is when they're out. I don't think they actually make any noise. So assuming they're contained, the nuisance is this, I would say it's probably the same as whether it's 5, 10, 9, whatever it is, right?
I would like to mention that.
But obviously there's more risk of chickens getting out if you have more.
I think we've exhausted this matter at this point. I think we just make a decision.
Yeah, I would just add that the size of the property is certainly a highlighting factor, based on what the borough attorney read.
Does anyone have a motion to amend it or to deny the non-domestic animal license? I'll fix my chair, which is broke.
So scary.
So there'll be a renewal in September, is that correct, Teresa? Renewal permit?
He got his initial permit in September.
So there'll
He
be,
renewed the following September,
And it was due for
and
renewal.
he would be due for renewal, then this had come up in the spring.
I would recommend that he come into compliance prior to his renewal request in September 2022.
Complied back to 5 chickens, you're saying?
And that they remain in the chicken yard as approved by the zoning officer.
Is there a second to that?
I would like to even go further by saying if we have further complaints about the chickens being in neighboring properties, that I think that his waiver should be canceled
For all the chickens? you're
for
saying?
all of the chickens. I mean, that's not fair to the neighbors.
Well, I think that's something we can handle.
There's been 2 complaints so far?
No.
More?
3.
3, so we're already at.
And the first complaint came 2 months after he was granted the initial waiver.
Oh, so then there were 5 hens.
Yes,
So
But he has since built the 3rd fence, I think.
but they escaped the spring after that fence was built.
Do I have a second
So,
to?
just to be clear, procedurally, it's what we're doing. There are obviously 2 interested parties. So you're denying the request for an expansion of the waiver at this point. That's what the vote is. So whether there should be an expansion of the waiver or not. So if you vote no, it means that you're declining to expand the waiver. And if you vote yes, then you're saying it can be 10 chickens. I think what Councilman Cole was suggesting is that the applicant is denying his waiver expansion tonight. He has a renewal in 2 months. And you're suggesting that you'd like to consider that renewal for 5, you'd like to see compliance with and no more complaints in the 60-day trial is really what the advice that we're giving to the applicant. But we're keeping the waiver as it is now. It doesn't expire until September 22. We're denying the expansion at this moment. So that everyone's for the applicant objecting and the council.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second, oh, I can't second.
Is there a second from anyone to that motion?
I was gonna make a comment. Procedurally, I was right here.
You can, because she made the motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain. I do business with his wife.
Allison, you got what you need?
So all in favor, except
I
Councilwoman
think
Net and Councilman Rodriguez.
correct. Okay, thank you. Moving along, request from RFH Rowing Booster Organization to post 6 recruitment lawn signs. This is the applicant here.
I don't think so, no. And I don't see a hand raised if they're here remotely.
You want to speak to that?
Yes, this went back and forth, in various emails. I think they were looking to put them all year round, which I think would be an excessive request for signage. I don't have a problem conceptually with them being in Fairhaven Fields and Sportsman's. Memorial Park across the street would not be appropriate. And I think McCarter Pond is a little tough to keep a sign there because it's a very small area and a lot of kids are there. So it's really up to the governing body, perhaps, they could have, them up 2 weeks every quarter or whatever you think is appropriate, but to give someone carte blanche to put a sign up for an entire year, I think would be setting a tough precedence in the town when we have a lot of signs requests. So
So how is that usually done? What's the time limit?
we usually do about 2 weeks
2
generally.
weeks, and it's usually once, twice a year,
Maybe they could
depending
change
on what
their,
it is.
maybe they could choose their season where they feel that would be most beneficial to the booster organization.
Or even if there were registration periods for, so, maybe a total of 6 or 8 weeks out of the year, pick your weeks that are, critical. Because if you almost feel like you do a disservice to publicizing something if it's there for the entire year, whereas if it's there and then gone and then there again, you notice it again.
Something to
Not,
to manage that, monitor it, though.
That's good enforcement usually.
It seems like they have a registration period prior to school starting,
Okay.
and then again in the summer when they host middle school children.
Yeah, the
So-
registration for the fall is right now. It started a couple of
Yeah.
days ago.
So what about 2 weeks during each of those registration periods? I think 8 weeks is a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If they feel as if they need to extend that, I assume they can come and talk to us again.
Or if there's a different sign, if one's for registration for one type of program and another's for a different type of program, we could then expand upon it as well.
did they give us something in writing to let us know what it is they're? Yes.
Yeah, that's the email. Allison,
It's just the email.
Oh,
It's in your packet.
yeah.
So is someone proposing though, Teresa had mentioned, she didn't, that Memorial Park would not be a good spot in the McCarter Pond, and you agreeing with that as well?
Yes.
So are we only approving 4 locations?
2 Fairhaven Fields, 1 Sportsman, and 1 youth center.
Okay.
If they have another location they want to propose, I'm open to that, but I would say,
Should we, in case they want to, should we, on River Road, that little piece of land on the
the
right,
entranceway.
when they come in?
Yeah, sure.
And it'll be up to them whether they want to put there since we're not going the other 2 now.
That's a good
Seems
suggestion.
fair?
That's
All
what
right.
it's-
All right.
So you're saying 2 weeks prior to the fall
Right,
Right.
and 2 weeks again in the
spring
spring?
or summer, whichever is
Okay,
there.
so 4 weeks total.
Yes. Does that seem reasonable?
That seems in keeping with other sign
Yeah.
requests that have been made.
Was that a motion, Betsy?
Yes, that is a motion.
You want a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Moving along, Habitat for Humanity. Hendrickson
Yes.
Place. Teresa can speak to this, please.
Yes, I just wanted to give the governing body an update. As you know, as part of our COLA settlement that was approved by the courts, the borough is giving a lot on Henderson to Habitat for Humanity to build a 2-family home that is with the owner occupied and a rental for a very low income family. The donation, the funding for that is coming from M&M Realty in lieu of one of their units. They're putting 2 where the Sunoco site is, as opposed to 3. I met with Habitat, and I wanted to give the governing body and the public an update on where we were at this point in time. The subdivision application, the borough needs to subdivide the property, was submitted, it was prepared by our borough attorney, Greg Cannon, and it is tentatively scheduled to be on the planning board's 8/16/2022 agenda. Rich Gardella recently submitted his comments on Greg's application, some of which I just followed today with Mr. Cannon and the planning board secretary and Rich to fulfill some of what Rich commented on. Attorney Cannon can elaborate on the reason why, but it's a conforming subdivision, and as a borough entity, we are not required to notice the 200-foot list for this meeting. However, the governing body certainly can make a determination that they do want to notice the neighbors, and we would notice accordingly if that was your decision. Property is located in R5 zone, and the maximum allowable square footage is 2,200 square feet in that zone. The memorandum of agreement with Habitat allows for a 2,800 square foot building for this two-family. The borough will need to amend the original ordinance, which was 2020-07, as it didn't properly codify the 2,800 square footage that was agreed to in the memorandum of agreement. It just referred to the bulk standards in R5, which is 2,200. I have an email out to Habitat for Humanity and their architect to set up a meeting with Rich Gardella, Nick Krasinski, and Planning and Zoning Chair Todd Leader to discuss the proposed building plans with the attempt to a design that is fits into the neighborhood as best possible for 2,800 feet in a zone that's 2,200 feet. And then I'm currently verifying that the professional expenses related to the subdivision can be charged to the borough's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that's where we are leading up to the subdivision on 8/16. Post the subdivision, the governing body has already determined that we would be donating the interior lot. That took place on 6/13 meeting. Greg Cannon will handle the transfer of title. I got a couple of examples. I haven't sent them to Greg yet from Habitat of various title transfers. I'll send you, Greg. Trees will need to be moved from that lot or lots if you so determine, because there are trees remaining on the lot that the borough will retain. I'm told they're mostly locust trees. But I will have CME, our tree expert, assess the trees before anything has been removed. I have to review the block and lot numbers as well as the addresses with our tax assessor and the United States Postal Service. I have to work with the CFO and M&M to determine the methodology for the transfer of the $175,000 donation from M&M to Habitat as per the court approved settlement. The timing may not permit a direct payment from M&M to Habitat, because M&M doesn't have to pay the $175,000 until they fill their building permits. So we may have to front the money to Habitat and wait for payment from M&M, but that's really a legal and practical considerations I have to work out with the attorneys and the CFO. I have to work with Habitat on the fees related to environmental testing and tree removal. They were expecting a shovel-ready lot when it came to tree removal. When I read over the agreement, I didn't see that the borough should have to take the trees down when we waive our fees. But I got back an email from their chairperson at Habitat just saying that perhaps, you know, they would pay for the environmental testing and we take the trees down. So that's something we still have to determine, because we are slated to pay for the environmental testing as part of the agreement. And the governing body will need to consider what, if anything, they want to do with the remaining lot. So that's just a synopsis of where we are at this juncture. And I'm certainly willing to answer questions, but the most pressing is, you know, this is a neighborhood and the residents live there, and the hearing will be at the planning board. But we treat it like any other hearing for the planning board, with the exception of, and Greg can explain the reasoning why, we don't have to send notice to, like you would ordinarily do within the subdivision for people within 200 feet.
Sure. So this is a minor subdivision, meaning that the resulting lots are conforming. So they would ordinarily be allowed in your neighborhood anyway. And as a result of that, the applicant requests a waiver to waive notice as a matter of right. Rich has astutely pointed out in his review of the application that because we are the government and you know, we're not some private entity trying to save money, and we should probably provide notice within 200 feet, and I tend to agree with that, just to let the neighbors know what's going on in the neighborhood. And as a matter of governmental transparency, it's not legality.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
We can run that and take care of it.
Additionally, I would just ask one other item. When CME, when Shari does come out to do the assessment of the trees, I would ask that she connect through Christie with the Shade Tree Commission and provide those materials or findings directly to the Shade Tree Commission.
Councilman McHugh?
Since this is, will this, you explain the planning board, but will this go before the zoning as well, because it exceeds the?
No,
20
as
square foot?
part of the settlement agreement and the memorandum agreement and the ordinance that we require to adopt, they have the right to build. They don't, there's no site plan approval or any other waivers that have to be obtained by having a copy of that.
If they wanted to
The time-
go,
Sorry, just to follow up on that, the timing would be, we would get the property subdivided. The vote before the planning board at this juncture is really just to approve, it's really a pro forma kind of division of the property. We're putting together this information in advance, so when the public shows up and they get notice of something that doesn't appear to be that big a deal in the vote, they have some background. That's really, what I think, we're just review letter gets out, to have some context at that hearing. And then you would, there's an overlay zone for this affordable housing already. So that I presume there's gonna be a vote here to amend that ordinance before they make the actual application for the zoning permits to put the house in, which means it would be conforming at that time, because the ordinance and the agreement would match each other.
We already adopted the ordinance, but Mike Edwards pointed out, and he drafted it, his office drafted it, we didn't draft it, that they just conferred to the bulk standards of R5, and not realizing that it was 2,200 square feet, so as opposed to 28, so we have to amend that ordinance. And I'll get Mike Edwards' office fairly amended.
And I think on behalf of the residents in that neighborhood, I think it's very important that the bulk standards are adhered to, and that the only allowance, if you want to call it that, or variance from the other homes in that neighborhood is the 2,800 square feet versus the 22. And every other way,
Yes, I understand.
that they would
And
comply with
that's-
the same setback, side yard setbacks, rear set, yeah.
So Tracy, I have some pretty serious concerns about that. I was looking at the subdivision of the property, and a resident who lives in that area reached out and expressed concerns. Number one, which is, and this is my recollection as well, Allen Street is a bit more narrow than Hendrickson. And so street parking on Allen is a little bit more challenging than on Hendrickson. I believe that's probably also true because of the DPW right there. I realize this would take us backwards, not forwards, but should the subdivision have been oriented off of Hendrickson versus off of Allen? And I don't know the answer to the question. It looks like you would have 135 by 139, so you would have 70 frontage, but then you wouldn't have as much depth. But secondarily to that, if it's a two-family, I'm presuming 4 vehicles. I'm very concerned about the driveway setup, especially since you would not stack cars single file if it's a two-family. You could go to 1, 2, 1, 2, but you're gonna need a double driveway to accommodate for a two-family, even if it's only 3 vehicles. Even if it's 2, you still need to be able to each park without having to make that a pull out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the bulk standards, my question would be is, can they be met with the 2,800 plus the parking conundrum, plus the street opening onto Allen is gonna be much wider than if it were a single lane.
As Teresa mentioned, we did have an initial meeting with Habitat and their architect. As part of the architectural plans, they have a concept plan for the site. I did bring up those concerns regarding not only off-street parking, but the requirement that driveways can only be a certain percentage of the front yard, and all the stuff that goes with that, the width of the curb cut, the location of the curb cut, etc. So the architect is looking at that. They're trying to maximize the off-street parking that they can. We did provide a larger lot where the R5 zone is 50 by 100 minimum. We went with 60-foot wide, and then obviously you've got additional depth at 140. So you have a little extra lot area to work with. And they're looking at obviously placement of the structure as it relates to the existing house to the north, and then the vacant lot that would be remaining on the corner, and how that all fits in. I do see your point about whether or not we had subdivided the properties on Hendrickson, but when we spoke about this initially, we tried to keep the rhythm of Allen Street because all those properties face Allen. And the design is that type of configuration versus now bringing two lots around onto Hendrickson. So
Can they provide for off-street parking, adequate off-street parking for two family?
they need to do the calculation based on the downstairs unit and the upstairs unit, however that shakes out based on number of bedrooms and the residential site improvement standards. We will look at all that as part of our zoning review and all the bulk requirements that come with that. They are still working with the architect to see what they can.
So right now, is there on-street parking on that west side of Allen allowed?
On-street parking
Yeah.
is allowed. Yes.
Right.
Just
Only
on
in
that
certain
side?
months, and you're not allowed to do it in the winter.
I don't.
What's the result if you do that study? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What's the result if you do that study and there's not sufficient parking? Where does that leave us?
Yeah, my suggestion would be we don't proceed with the subdivision until
Well-
we're sure they can fit everything on the
Just
property.
remember, we just had an initial meeting with their professional 2 weeks ago. So that was the first that we really saw the placement of structure on the lot. We gave them plenty of information to go back with. And I even sent a subsequent email and Teresa outlined a lot of that discussion that we had. So that they're well aware of where they need to, where they need to be. If it's not met, it would trigger variances or non-compliance and.
Teresa,
Keep
you
in mind,
mentioned this was going to the planning
borough is
board.
the applicant for the subdivision.
This was going to the planning board, correct? You
Yes.
mentioned, and when is that?
Right now, it's August 16th.
Is that enough time, Rich, for that plan?
We are looking to do a follow-up meeting in the coming weeks, yes, in the next week or two.
I put it out in today's email that I'm certain we can get the meeting together between now and then. I'm not certain that the architect will have plans redesigned by then. And don't forget, I've got more than one attorney, I've got Greg involved, and I've got Mike Edwards involved, and the memorandum of agreement is such that, that they do have the right to build based on the ordinance of the overlay zone. But I think everyone's feeling was that they came here to work cooperatively with the borough. And that's the intent of us sitting down with them and seeing, where we are. I'm sure everyone, not only the public, but the planning board will be very interested in what the plans for the building are in so much as if their only chance to discuss that will be at the planning board meeting. Perhaps August 16th won't be realistic. See how it works out.
Certainly what I'm wondering at this moment, if there's adequate time for that kind of technical review, which probably I can see why that might not all get wrapped up in advance of an August 16th meeting. And certainly this body, when is our August meeting?
15th.
So the night before, we might find out.
I just hate to
planning board-
subdivide, in this fashion, if the alternative subdivision will provide much more ease in terms of meeting the bulk standards. I mean, I don't know. I just think there must be.
I think we should know if we're gonna be creating a
I
parking
agree.
problem
Yeah.
in advance of the
I
planning
100%
board.
agree. And I understand why we did the orientation we did, but I think these other considerations, in my view at least, take precedent over.
Teresa, did we already vote on this? Is this voted on already, as far as which subdivision to move forward with? Which?
No, you were presented with the plan, and what you really determined with more direction, anything else in executive session, that you wanted to donate the interior lot.
Right.
And I didn't. The planning board chair, Todd, he's been involved in the emails, and he feels comfortable that he can sit down with them without involving, multiple members of the planning or zoning board, and our professionals, and look at some of this. I think Betsy might have copied, and he gave a synopsis today that it made it seem as if he didn't think it was a heavy lift to design something that would be in character of the neighborhood at the 2,800 square feet.
Yeah, can I ask, Councilwoman Christine, is this resident concerned about safety? What's the, ultimately, what are they trying to achieve? Are they worried about the occupants of the house not having adequate parking? What's their,
So I don't live over there, and a lot of what happens right here on the dais is what I hear from our community members and our residents, because I can't be everywhere in town and I don't know everything. When people reach out, I take it seriously, excuse me, that they know their street and their neighborhood and the character of what happens over there a lot better than I do. So when this was raised to me, I thought it was important to make sure that if we're going to be subdividing property and spending a lot of professional fees on this, to make sure that, just as Tracy said, that these bulk standards can then be met, with the exception of the habitable floor area increase, because we are creating this impact on that area of our community. And so we should take care to do it in a way that makes sense, not to violate our own standards. So maybe that means moving the subdivision line a little bit in one direction. Maybe it means reorienting it entirely and doing the interior lot from Hendrickson, running from Hendrickson to the rear of the property. I don't know, but I don't think it makes, I'm not in favor of proceeding with the subdivision until we're sure that we can fit specifically the driveway issue. They already have enough challenges on Allen Street with DPW. I don't want to exacerbate pre-existing conditions, and you know, I want to get this going. Obviously, I hate to throw a wrench in it, but I do think it's a serious consideration. I mean, you don't want to put the drywall up before you're sure the electrical switches are in the right place.
So I just want to make sure that I totally get it right. You have to provide 4 parking spaces. Is that sort of what has to happen? We're obliged to
We haven't-
have a lot that has, I just want to understand what has to be done. The 4 parking spaces have to
We
be
have to-
on that property?
We have to ensure that, based on ordinance and the residential site improvement standards, that they're off-street, that require off-street, on-site parking is met, off-street parking is met. We don't know that until, every house is different. It's typically driven by number of bedrooms.
Okay. So we don't know how many parking spots we need on the driveway and off-street. We don't know.
I think 4 is a
It's
safe
a
number.
Safe number.
The challenge is it's going to be 2-family. They have plenty of lot depth to allow for a driveway down the side of the structure, but to try to come up with some type of tandem system and jockeying vehicles around, they have to allow, so if one occupant is there, the other one can park either next to it and have access into the driveway as well. So the architect is looking at the options. We're having a follow-up meeting. And,
I would be comfortable, did I catch?
yeah, it's fine.
I would be comfortable putting our concerns in a technical memo to the borough engineer and the planning board to just document the threshold of concerns that the governing body has, and then they can factor that in as you're going through that process. Because it's going to be a process. There'll be many meetings, you'll be looking at drawings and talking with the planning board and so on. How does that sit with you?
Rich is the planning board engineer,
I know.
And
so,
we're the applicant.
and we're the applicant. You understand, Habitat's not the applicant here, the boroughs.
I know. So I think that's a good idea.
Why is it that there's relief between 22 and 2,800 square feet? When R5 calls for 2,200 square feet.
It was part of the settlement agreement as part of the affordable housing.
Right, but I thought it was just to R5. Was 2,800 mentioned?
Yes,
Yes.
specifically. Under no circumstances shall total building square footage exceed 2,800 square feet unless mutually agreed to by the parties. Within 90 days, we had to do the rezoning ordinance, which we did. And it'll, you know, we'll get rid of the development property, site plans and elevations. We put an exhibit on here, you know, of what they had given us at the time from their architect. This is all in the agreement that was done in February of 21.
But it was only 22 to 28 for that property.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just that property.
Right, it wasn't for all our plots.
And it has, the one's a 3-bedroom and the other's, is a 2 to 3 bedroom, the rental unit. So I think the reason it was 2,800 is because you couldn't design that in, in a 2,200. Is basically what I'm sure this came from.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. I have 3 quick questions. First one, can you just describe the overlay zone in the area? Is it just those 2 lots or is it
It's just that one
Broader.
lot that we actually are donating.
the overlay zone or,
The affordable housing zone itself is just for that one lot.
so it cannot be it can't be the other lot?
The borough has a choice of what lot to give them.
So it's one or the other?
Yes.
It can't be across the street because, okay. Understood.
And even says
Meaning that
here,
corner subdivided was
There's
whichever way we
space-
subdivided.
There's space behind the DPW, between the DPW and the Hoaglands. There's a lot there, and I was curious, we kind of solve all of our problems by utilizing that lot, so it doesn't sound like and I know this is late in the game to ask this question, it came to me, it's not my question. But somebody asked, why don't we just put it there? And it's because we can't put it there because it's not zoned properly under the agreement we have with Fair Share Housing
I believe it's under the ordinance that we subsequently adopted.
as a result of our agreement.
Yeah, I have the agreement here. I don't have the ordinance. I'd have to ask that question to,
I think the
That would have been a good
agreement
solution.
included, it was that corner as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
My memory serves me. It was.
I can't even remember. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
Councilman Smith?
No, nothing further.
Did we even put block 45, block 10 or 12
Okay.
in the agreement itself?
Do we need to make a motion on anything here or give direction?
Oh, no, you have to give me direction that we want those within 200 feet. And you're on notice that we have to amend the ordinance, and I'll get, Mike Edwards on that. And then I'm gonna wait and see how it plays out between our professionals, Nick, Rich, Todd, their professionals, and see how, whether or not this can actually move forward on the 8/16 planning board agenda. A site plan itself is, not a site plan, a subdivision itself, a conforming subdivision, you just end up with 2 lots. And generally speaking, you don't necessarily talk about what's going to go on those 2 lots, but I think I would be kind of think in deference to the community and to the process, if it's the only time it's going to be spoken of in public, that we should have plans or an idea of the plans conceptually and some of these other things most notably. And it even says in our agreement here that they will work with the borough engineer on the location of the houses and also the driveway units. This is Habitat will work with the borough engineer to design a location of driveway and location of units. So, I know they go through this process all the time with towns, and I think Habitat has a very good reputation. I don't think their goal is to come in here and not be cooperative with the borough. So I'm optimistic that when professionals sit down and with the expertise we have with our planning and zoning chair, that we'll be able to, come up with something that everyone's pleased with.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Habitat giving us a hard time. I'm just worried that logistically, it's impossible to make it fit in a manner that's functional, or that, that you can't have the street opening 2 cars wide, or I don't know. That's my real concern, and that we should be sure before we subdivide.
So during that process, as you're conducting these meetings, should it appear to be impossible, I would like to suggest that matter come back here before it goes to the planning board.
Yeah, right. We either consider moving the boundary or
Right.
subdividing the alternative direction, because that would provide 60 feet of frontage versus,
We might have to look at it again.
I think we do have 60 feet of frontage, don't we?
no, I'm sorry, it would provide 70 feet of frontage versus 60. So an additional 10 would really help with setbacks and that street opening.
In the meantime, it'd be a good idea to talk to some people that live in that area.
I think we should inform the planning board secretary that we'll So there's no way to do that. So we'd have 8 days to get the plan together with Habitat in order to get the notice out in time, 10 days before August 16th. And then let's come back here if there's an issue. That's the day before the meeting. I've had the witnesses there to go and over there.
So are you suggesting September planning board meeting?
Well, I don't control their agenda, but we'll certainly, I don't think we can do it on the 16th.
Is there any issue with asking the planning board to hear it at a later time? Is there any concern for that?
No, it happens all the time, with planning board, but I think we should just make that call right now. There's just no way to do that in time. To get the notice out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
13 days before the hearing, August 3rd, that's 8
Yeah,
days from
That makes sense.
That's not gonna happen. So we will get a new date and then we'll let you know next.
Great, thank you.
Moving along, Bicentennial Hall ADA improvements. There's information on the council packets. The total estimate for all the work at Dick Hall is $447,380, less the grant, which is $174,000. Leaves the borough's spend at $273,380. Teresa, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, the
before-
447,380 is inclusive of the estimate for that Eli's office had submitted for the design work. The estimate for the work itself, Rich Gardella updated those project estimates internally. And as you see, we divided them like we did the first time into work that's eligible for the CDBG grant and then work that's not eligible, but still in the opinion of the borough engineer, should be completed to that building, painting and irrigation and roofing and other repairs that are necessary there. So as per my contacts at the county, I did provide you with their very strict Schedule A timeframe. I have to contact them. It says 30 days, they must have an engineer. Since Rich doing some of the engineering itself, I gotta see that proof of engineer and the resolution of the governing body may not pertain to us if we're just using Eli's office and Rich do the site work. And then we would, if you're agreeable, would approve the design work from Eli's office and then move forward with getting that documents ready and out to bid. And I'm assuming we'd have to divide the bid into the eligible and non-eligible work.
You're gonna start, Councilman Cole?
Thank you, Mayor. So I spent quite a bit of time on this particular matter, and I'm very much in favor of barrier-free accessibility in all public buildings. I'm also very much in favor of preserving the structure. I do have, I sense after a lot of documents I've read, there's a lot of history. We've had more than one architect on this project. Mr. Mark Pavlov's work, I have to say, stands out the most. He's the preservation architect, has a great deal of experience. He's very well regarded in Fairhaven, especially among members of the Historic Preservation Commission. I mention that because there's not a single word of preservation in Mr. Goldstein's proposal. In fact, I wouldn't even call this a proposal. This is, as he's written, a notice to proceed. So any decision about the grant is tied directly to this wording of the proposal, assuming we agree with his proposal. It's a notice to proceed. Authorization to commence our professional services will be issued immediately upon final notification from the county that the grant has been allocated. I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds like it's more or less bypassing the authority of this body, and I'm not comfortable with that. But perhaps most importantly, it seems to me that in this case, for this building in this town, being really the only notable historic building, public building in Fairhaven, we should have the proper professional services. Mr. Goldstein has many credentials. None of them have to do with preservation architecture, even if there is someone on the staff with some credentials. I would just argue that we should be careful about making decisions about a grant that automatically trigger any kind of professional services, no matter who it is. That is, it's almost like one decision triggers a set of decisions, like a Russian nesting doll. And I'm opposed to that. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't see why anybody would be. I don't know why it's even worded this way. So, but if we can uncouple the Goldstein proposal, put it over here and just talk about Bicentennial Hall. The right thing with Bicentennial Hall is a worthwhile conversation. And I think everyone wants to see a barrier-free Bicentennial Hall that's well preserved. Preserved is different than renovate. I did make some calls. Actually, a lot of people made calls. Sometime immediately following that council meeting where we identified priorities for spending, the PD, we talked about DPW, we talked about Bicentennial Hall. And it was clear that this body had some reservations about excessive spending. I share that concern. So I reached out to members of the community to immediately figure out what we could do to help preserve Bicentennial Hall. And very quickly, what came together is a very, very robust group of dedicated citizens that were part of the Historical Association of Fairhaven. They're still active. The association itself has really went dormant for a number of years after 2011. But over a period of 19 years, they were able to raise $500,000 to invest in Bicentennial Hall. And I would just submit that grants are not the only way we can preserve Bicentennial Hall. The board is being rounded out. There is a commitment to move forward. And a call went out to Mr. Pavlov on behalf of the Historical Association to see if there'd be any interest on his part in picking up where he left off. His work was that excellent. He indicated that he would be very willing to re-engage with Fairhaven if he was invited to do so.
He was invited to do so.
Well, let's just say a renewed invitation might get a different answer. And I offer that because a lot of us have been given the idea, and I'll just say perhaps it's only me. I thought that it's on the agenda tonight, I assume because you're under the impression that we must take action one way or the other. Is
It's on the agenda tonight as a follow-up discussion we had last week.
So, well, I would say that we have a little more time than at least I thought we had. And I'd like to suggest we take our time with this. It's important enough. And I also think we should look at this expenditure in light of other expenditures that we're considering. The Community Development Office is willing to work with us. And having spoken with the director today, she understands the complications of communities coming together, hiring professionals, putting together a plan. The clock on this project is triggered after a clearance letter goes out. And that's a direct result of action by the county commissioners, and which is in response to a plan that we submit, project agreement. That project agreement will also have to get signed off by SHPO. So there's a process here, and we have a little bit of time. And I did not think that that was the case until late this afternoon. So I think at this point, I'll just wait to hear from my fellow council members.
Before I go to Councilman McHugh, I just want to make sure I understood what you're saying. When you're talking about the historic foundation, you're saying a private raise of money, so we don't have to borrow money? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's part of how we can help Bicentennial Hall.
You're suggesting using a different architect than Eli.
I am.
And then number 3 is taking our phone.
Correct.
Councilman McHugh.
Thanks for that clarification there. It's actually a nice synopsis. The original architect, what was his response? Because Eli wasn't our
We asked him for a
primary
proposal. I
architect.
happened to go back in my emails and look, and because we went to him initially because he had done the work and Rich, he knew Rich well, and Rich even spoke to him and he just told him he was so busy, he couldn't possibly do it. He had so much work at the time. And
His fee structure is,
Might be worth it.
And so at the time, we ended up using Laura Berwin, who had done all of Eli's historical work and had worked with SHPO, and they assisted us in preparing for the grant and getting SHPO's buy-in on all of that. But we did ask that architect specifically, and I could find the email where he said, I can't do it.
Well, he seems to be interested now.
Is that, I don't
Call
doubt
it a new development.
Secondary thing, Councilwoman, I share your concerns about that triggering action.
Mhm. Right here.
I guess we could just clarify, go around the horn, if we're okay with Eli moving forward once the authorization commences, but and kind of allowing that to happen, it does feel somewhat kind of like the rug's being pulled out, right? So good catch on that. Essentially, I'm okay with the authorization to move forward. But I think maybe we should make it clear here that we're greenlighting Eli to do that, and he's not just doing it on his own accord.
Right, so I just want to go back to understanding some basics. Teresa, what is the deadline for this grant?
I put the timetable in there because it came from right in the package of approval. It's 31 pages, and I gave them to Tracy today. And basically and fundamentally, I've been told by other people who have had a CDBG grant, and I've never done one before, that they're very strict on the timetable.
Right.
We didn't pay attention to it, so I pointed out to you earlier when I spoke, 30 days must have an engineer and 45 days proof of engineer with a resolution of the governing body. I'm not even sure that's relevant to the Borough of Fairhaven.
Well, Article 3, Section C, subrecipient may upon written notice to the Office of Community Development request a project extension to complete the project. When I was on the phone with her, she said they're accustomed to deferring or extending projects for up to 3 years. They're our partner. Should we need more time to make decisions on either professionals or on financing or on engineering, whatever those issues may be, we have a willing partner. We're not going to forfeit the grant or lose it. They'll help us circulate our plans to SHPO, which is good to know. One of the main things that I think I didn't understand is that there's a process that we have to go through prior to submitting it to the commissioners, and only after they sign off do we get a clearance letter, which is then when the clock starts. So that's still some time ahead of us. But that work has to include, obviously, design services, professional services. And one of the conditions, which makes sense, is that those services that we retain have to follow HUD regulations, which require that consulting services, all engineering and architectural, et cetera, be obtained through competitive negotiations when the project is federally funded. The consultant must begin design of engineering project within 60 days of the county commissioner's clearance letter. We have not put out a proposal for professional services, and that's what I would like to see this governing body do.
Oh, this one too. Yeah, last thing, love the idea of crowdsourcing this again, where we can, may it be just a native garden to sit around outside and welcome that. The other thing that was kind of called out a while ago that I want to resurface is the it's very minutiae details, but the tin ceiling repair replacement
Their jury seems to be out on that. When historically that became part of the building. It may not have been original, the tin ceiling, and that's pretty expensive to replace that. So maybe we could ask the historic commission to research into that, because if we're gonna truly restore as is, we want to try, as historically accurate as possible. If the tin ceiling was added at a later time frame, is not historically accurate, maybe we don't want to spend all that money replacing it. If it wasn't part of the original building.
I would
know it
also
was in the
comment-
SHPO documents, I'd have to go back and review what they said about the tin ceiling, honestly, I don't recall off the top of my head.
I would also comment that'll further exacerbate the acoustics in that facility, which I know we've been trying to look at ways to address it, not exacerbate it, so
Right.
certainly worth looking at, but I think that was what, like a $30,000 lift or something?
35.
Good. Councilwoman Cox?
I don't know, I'm very conflicted by this. I think, and with all the expenses that we're looking at, to ask our residents to spend another $273,000 to repair the building, I think is a lot. And I'm guessing, included in that $273,000 is Eli's expenses.
Yes, in the total that I
That's
gave,
included.
I put that in there, yes.
Is there any way that we can take advantage of the grant and just use that money to upgrade ADA requirements in Bicentennial Hall right now? Or, I mean, are we
We've divided the work
required to
into-
use matching funds? Are we required
We divided the work into grant
Right.
eligible and
and
non-grant.
non-eligible?
I
So,
thought that wasn't that what we were doing, that we were gonna just use the grant?
well, that's what I'm hoping, because, well, the grant actually the cost exceeds the grant. but
Can I just, can I jump in to answer Louis? I think that's what we're trying to find out, is whether there was an opportunity to just use grant money to
Right.
fund the entire project. And then we got this back a few days ago, which is showing that we would have a out-of-pocket spend of 273. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
Because
that out-of-pocket 273 is for the, is also includes the work that was not grant eligible.
right, we have that
The
spreadsheet.
grant eligible
Grant eligible
is
comes to
239,
239.
yes.
So what I'm wondering is there any way that we can go back? Now we have a budget, we have a finite number to work with, which is about $174,000. And say, what can you give us for $174,000 that would make the building more ADA compliant? And not ask the residents right now to underwrite any extra expenses.
I don't know who we're gonna say that to.
Well,
Whoever
we're gonna
professional.
say it to Eli, he's the one that gave you the numbers.
We can consult directly with the Community Development Office. In fact, I put that question to the director today, and there is flexibility.
They're not designing the.
Doesn't have to do with design, it has to do with how we're allowed to use the grant
Right.
dollars.
But let's just say we can use that $174,000 any way we want.
Has to be
You know, it
ADA.
has to be.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about on this spreadsheet, we can use that for grant eligible reconstruct renovation. So why can't we go back to Eli, who created this document, and say, show us where we can
He
say,
didn't create it, Rich created it.
oh, Rich
What I
created.
did off of the last meeting was try to simplify and strike out the items that do not pertain to the revised scope of work. I created subcategories, as you can see, the exterior, which is the barrier-free ramp,
Right,
all items relating to that, including the restoration of the exterior to put the siding back to its proper, design. Any type of interior restoration that's related to the access door and all that. The next item is the bathrooms. renovation of the existing, and then adding the new ADA compliant bathroom. Then we talked about putting in a handicap space. We had decided that the most cost effective, as you can see, for just over $1,000, is simply stripe a space on Cedar. It's an easy, quick way of doing it, and you know what, if it doesn't work, we look at alternatives. I think I said maybe we look at shared parking across the street or whatever the case, or there were some comments about maybe putting in some type of curb cut in the front, but before you incur all those costs, a building of that size, an on-street parking accessible space is probably more than adequate, given the fact that we just did it at ADA improvements with the crosswalk. We worked with the folks at Acme when they did their site work, and that whole corner is all ADA accessible. And then I also included some miscellaneous work that was on Eli's original estimate. It had to do with exit signage and non-conforming exit signs and things of that nature. So there's really like there's two main, or the ramp, the exterior ADA ramp, and then the bathrooms, and then the two others is minor work, which is the parking stall and the miscellaneous.
So can I?
And listen, we did add in general conditions, overhead profit, inflation, contingencies. So there's mechanisms in place that cover us. As you can see, the trade subtotal is 125.5. But then when you factor in the current economy, construction costs, supply chain issues, et cetera, that's why it bumps it up.
Do we have to have two bathrooms? Can we just make the one bathroom that exists ADA compliant?
I did ask that question when I was doing this estimate. There's a reason why we showed it on our concept plan, and typically it's code driven and occupancy driven based on the building. But then the question that I have too is, well, not the question, what we were trying to do is try to keep within that scope of work based on the grant that was submitted, and not, we've already taken out the parking lot, we've taken out some of those other items that were eligible. We've really trimmed it down. I don't know how CDBG, you could be basically possibly having to go for a revision or an amendment for that,
And I don't, off the top of my head, recall the occupancy considerations that we were insufficient bathrooms. It's tied to the type of meeting space. I have to go
Well,
back
I
and
mean,
read
we
all the
only have
emails.
one now. And
Right,
we're
but-
using it as a meeting space.
Understood. But don't forget, this was originally contemplated that we were going to make it our main meeting space for the borough with, the dais and the parking lot, and we were gonna take the meeting space out of Borough Hall here, move it over there and
Right,
repurpose.
but we're not doing that now.
Understood. I'm not defending doing
Right,
one thing or
right.
another. You'd have to go back to a professional and ask them, do we need an ADA bathroom here, another ADA bathroom?
A preservation architect would know if there were any exemptions available, because it is on the National Register of Historic Places. And it doesn't immediately become subject to every uniform code compliance issue, barrier free. There are some flexibility, on some allowances. In my experience over the years, I've seen that, but I don't know that that's the case for this building. But certainly we would have the right professional at our disposal to submit those questions if we did have the right professional.
I'm just gonna make a comment. I think we all love Bicentennial Hall. It's definitely a beautiful space, for sure. I think we all want, ADA improvements eventually. I like the crowdsource idea, especially with the concern of how many other projects we have going on right now. I think that's a pretty good solution. I like the idea of delaying as well. Let's see what's going to go on with the new community center. That's kind of changed my mind on everything. When we were talking about Bicentennial Hall, we were talking originally about we needed a meeting space for our community because we were eliminating that. Now we're building that behind the police station to a tune of, $300,000. So I think this expenditure, asking our residents to pay for this and then finance it over the next 30 years is something that we should probably reconsider. And then as far as the architect change, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Not that necessarily Eli did anything wrong, but I do believe that, and if the number's wrong, correct me. I mean, we've paid him out $600,000 now in all these projects, and there's not a shovel in the ground yet. So taking a chance on another, and he didn't do anything wrong. We asked him to do the work. Prior governing bodies asked him to do the work. But if there's someone that has a specific skill set in relation to a historic preservation on a building, I don't think that's a bad thing if we were to consider it. Councilman Rodriguez.
Sure, I still support providing access under ADA code for all of our residents and anybody visiting our community to the building. So I do support that. I think, and I don't know if I speak for everybody, I think we all agree that if we're gonna have meetings, any kind of meetings there, or use it as a community space of any sort, it should have the proper facilities to allow folks to come in. As far as some of the nice to haves, I could do without, the tin ceiling's been down for probably 20 years at this point. That could wait a long time as far as I'm concerned. I'm not even sure that was there 150, 60 years ago when it was first constructed. It might have been added along the way. But when I looked at the numbers, while Councilwoman Koch was speaking, the $235,000 additional to do some of those nice to haves at a 3% rate over a 20-year period costs 2,200 households $7 a year, which in other words is 59 cents per month. So I don't know that the number is really a problem at 59 cents. I think I've spent 59 cents a month on dumber things than preserving.
What's your 3%?
3% interest,
But now it's at 6%.
not for meetings. So call it pocket change, if you will. It's just not a big number, and it's not going to be paid by everybody here right now or everybody in this community right now, but it's really important that we do make some investment in that building specifically for ADA, but painting the outside, fixing the roof, some of the upgrades to get the insects out of there, those kinds of things aren't really going to cost us a heck of a lot of money. So I still support that. If we want to change architects, totally fine. When we asked Art a while back, unfortunately that wasn't on the table, wasn't in the cards for us at the time. But I do support investing in the building. I think it's part of our history. It's a really important thing that we that we make it the center of our town. We can do a lot more there. I know we've done some additional new things this year with the green team and Love Where You Live, which is fantastic. And I'd love to do more there.
Thank you. Councilwoman Neff. Apologize.
Thank you, Mayor. I just think we have to make a decision whether we're going to use this grant or not. We have a grant. I think we can raise funds from the community. Do we want to give up on this grant? And then work around making sure that whatever we're doing, that we are going to take advantage of this money that is available to us, and maybe hopefully add funds from the community beyond that. I don't think we have bandwidth to keep discussing this every council meeting, and I would suggest we spin this off into a separate group. I mean, it sounds a little bit like we're talking about the historical association. We have our own historical commission. Are they the same people? Are they talking? We have a facilities committee, so it kind of seems to me that, there's all kinds of people talking. Everybody should come together, and this should reside somewhere, and maybe I'm not sure, Councilman Rodriguez, this should liaison to the historical commission, whether that's where it resides, but I just feel that this conversation should go somewhere first and be centralized, Because otherwise it kind of sounds like everybody is going to different places and we're now talking about something different than last time. This is not a well-organized approach. We don't have bandwidth. We have other things we need to do, and I think we've already decided that the police department is our priority, and we're starting with that first, and that's what we should be focusing on. I don't find that this is, is this for this year? Would we want to table this for future years?
Well, I was under the impression that we had voted this down.
We did.
And then the discussion turned to whether the grant would cover all of our expenditures. From my standpoint, I'm looking at a sheet that tells me it does not.
Right.
It's telling me it's $239,000. So if someone wants to make a motion to move forward at this time based on that information, or wants to see if that they have 4 members of this governing body that agree with them, I'm not going to sit there and gag them. They're welcome to have
Yeah,
that
I mean,
discussion.
I would suggest something different, that we move this we table this.
Right.
And move this to a centralized body to better understand this and follow up on this. And possibly move this discussion to next year. We already halfway through the year. We need other things to resolve. And who is going to be in charge of following up on this? Because
Well, until there's
we can have different commissions, different historical societies doing different things. Just back to me, I'm open to anything, but I just suggest that we centralize this discussion and table this for a further date.
Yeah, may I? So, the Historic Preservation Commission has a very clear jurisdiction. This matter comes, and I'm just reading from the letter that they had signed, where they approved the entire plan with the exception of a fixed dais, which is in the last paragraph of their letter, but it says, this matter comes before the commission as a result of the jurisdiction relating to the maintenance, modification, and alteration of Bicentennial Hall, formerly known as Fisk Chapel. So they're clearly in charge here. If you want to make a motion, I'll support it to send all of this to them
And have
them
in charge of
make a
this.
recommendation to the council. And then we can thumbs up or thumbs down. And they could, look at all of this information, and because they are,
Are you talking about the new information that Rich has submitted with new costs
Everything.
involved?
yeah, everything, the whole thing.
What Councilwoman Paul
The whole
just told us, just essentially have them look at this.
But are you saying to include what Councilman Cole mentioned as well about the possibility?
Consideration of changing an architect, and who should that be? Whether there's anything here that has been suggested by Eli that infringes upon the historical nature of the building, because I'm not clear. It seems like they already went through the historical commission. If this grant can be pushed out so that we can lose crown funding. All this should reside somewhere else, but we don't have the ability to do this here. I think these are great ideas, but I just find that we voted down on something that is back on the agenda every time. And that the conversation is different every time, and that really concerns me. The continuous going around circles that I see here.
Before we finish up, I just want to give Councilman Chris McKee an opportunity.
Thank you. So, I think part of this might be my doing, that we're still talking about this. So just for the benefit of the public, the numbers were broken down into, or the work was broken down into two sections. Project work items eligible for CDBG grant, and project work items required, I don't know what that means, required, but not eligible for the grant. So the total grant eligible work, which is all ADA related, was $239,000. Less the 174 leaves us with a balance of 65,000. So keep that in the back of your head. The other items on the not grant eligible items were flagpole, irrigation, lawn, planting beds, some masonry work was about $5,000. Siding repairs and flashing, probably a regular maintenance item that we should be tending to from time to time anyway, some roofing repairs, and then some acoustic wall panels, tin ceiling repair, painting. I guess my question is for Rich, is there anything on that not grant eligible item list that we would have to do in order to proceed with the other work totaling 239,000?
Say that again.
Maybe
Are there
Sure.
certain
Maybe the
items
sidewalk.
on-
The not grant eligible items, do we need to do any of those in order to proceed with the grant eligible work? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, so if you don't have a direct answer right now.
No, the way this was structured was the ADA type improvements and then all the other punch list type things that we need to get done just to wrap things up over there. Obviously, the siding is in a condition where it needs to be prepared and painted. That's the painting number.
Okay.
Some of the brick needs to be repointed. The chimney area and things of that nature. The carging is the masonry maintenance as it relates to the foundation. There's some cracking that needs to be sealed. So these are all, some of this is preventive maintenance, and then some of this is just finishing up some of the landscaping, the lawns area, the planting beds. We used to have a flagpole there, things of that nature. But to answer your question, yeah, these are somewhat separate items.
Okay, so we could technically proceed with the grant items,
The
the
ADA
items that are eligible for the grant,
Yes.
and then delay the additional work. One of my questions that I had after reviewing this in conjunction with Eli's proposal was, is there, I just can't recall, but I don't know if we would need a new one, is there an existing walkway or sidewalk from the ramp base to the street sidewalk?
I included that,
Okay,
under the barrier-free ramp. There's a
Okay.
number of items. I included a sidewalk 60 square yards.
so why did Eli exclude that from his scope?
He had a sidewalk in there.
Under, then maybe I'm reading this
I think I
incorrectly.
bumped the number up a little bit because the sidewalk is gonna be greater because we need to get them from the street to the building where before it was just from the parking lot
Right,
to the
he,
building.
yeah, he included that there's no site work included in his proposal, and the municipality is responsible for all sidewalks required to maintain accessible right of way to the new ADA ramp. Was the walkway that is on the Fisk property is part of the ramp? Or you don't know?
The walkway that would be the walkway from the sidewalk at the street to the ramp is included in this estimate.
Okay,
It's minor site work.
okay,
It's,
right, I'm just pointing out that he had
Yeah.
excluded it, and I was confused, because obviously we need that.
but I tried
Otherwise,
to capture
there's no
all,
accessibility.
I tried to capture all the restoration
Understood.
too, as it relates to these types of
Yeah.
items.
Okay,
And take them off of some of the other areas
Right.
that they showed up.
so from my view, Tracy, thank you for figuring out that we might have some more wiggle room on the time and flexibility with any sort of changes. I think that's helpful, because I think time gives us an opportunity to say, okay, you know, what do we need to do next? Rich, thank you for breaking this down. That's significantly helpful, because I'm seeing, if we accept these numbers as they stand, the difference is $65,000, not a couple $100,000 to receive the benefits of this grant, which is a lot of money and would make the building accessible. And maybe there's even opportunity for further edits to reduce that cost even more. You didn't run $65,000 at 3%.
I will right now. I literally have the spreadsheet up in front of me. Give me a second.
Yeah, so I think those are important points, and Lilini, I hear you. It feels like we're continuing, but I think if, you know, we can, I'm on board to pivot it to the commission, and
I have one thing that I feel should be dealt with.
then bring it back, though.
Yes,
I would have
fine.
them review everything
Yeah,
and
of
then bring it
course.
right back.
Yeah,
And then as long as we have confirmation that we're okay on the timing for the grant, then I'm fully on board that we should be exploring all grant eligible items and seeing what we can pursue.
so Goldstein's proposal excludes certain things. It also excludes any acoustical analysis. It also excludes IT wireless sort of AV issues, which we know we would have if we had meetings in there. And I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that this proposal and the language has this coupled with any decision that we make about the grant, $174,000 CDBG grant. And I would like to get some consensus. And I think that they should be uncoupled and considered separately. If we accept the grant, it doesn't trigger anything with anyone's proposal until this governing body says so. So personally, maybe that's just a matter of putting it on the record until we sign it. He can say that it's triggering his services, but really it's not signed and I would not be on board with it. So I would just like to see if there's an agreement from the other members of the governing body on that.
Well, the proposal's not on your agenda to approve.
Well, it's the language and the way it's worded
Understood, but
suggests that it would be automatic should we accept the grant. I'm not on board.
we would have to approve this proposal,
I agree with you.
and it's not on the agenda for approval. And based on this discussion, it won't go on the agenda for approval.
The only, sorry, the only last comment I would have is that if there is gonna go, if this goes back, if this the council decides to send it back to the historical preservation commission, to consider all of these items, that we try to separate maybe the work of the grant versus what might go beyond the grant, because for example, some of the issues you're talking about, acoustics, AV, and some of the other issues, I would suggest that, if we can crowdfund for that, or if we decide we want to pay for that, we look at that later, but that must be a way that we can do this ADA improvements separate from that. And I think if we bring it all together again, it will become more difficult with the project. If we can get this grant and achieve this ramp, so you get someone that has a wheelchair and can go up on the ramp, they can cross the road, they have ADA parking, can cross the road safely, they have their ramp into the building and they can use the bathroom. To me, I'm fairly satisfied that we did something very important on a timely basis and we used the grant for that. All these other issues about the historical nature of the building and how we want to improve it any further, we deal with that separately and let the grant do its job. That would be my suggestion, so that we can maybe split this off and get it done. It's important for, an elderly person to be able to get this access sooner rather than later. So that would be my suggestion. I don't have any issues with keeping the same architect or changing it. That's not an issue for
We
me.
have to discuss that because according to HUD guidelines, we're required to conduct a competitive process, which means we have to solicit proposals, period. We can't submit plans based on, we are required, this is in the best interest of the community, the residents, as well as the building, but this is our duty. We have to, if we're gonna make use of those dollars, we have to put this out for a proposal, request for RFP.
That, I'm assuming that happens after we decide how we wanna, what is it that we're doing and whether the scope will be just this, just the ramp
I
and the
could have
bathroom.
sworn, that that's what we asked for at the last meeting,
That's what I thought.
was to know just what's covered by just the grant.
And I
Can
thought
can we
that's
get,
what
can we get that information? Because if we
I
can,
think
That's page one.
That's page one.
Page two is not covered by the grant, but the page one exceeds the grant. So I think the question is, do we pay the extra and move forward, or do we want to revisit,
Yeah,
which
we-
sounds like there are reasons to possibly revisit and then maybe send it back to our body to discuss that, because it's exceeding, but it's essentially page one, and that's what I'm saying, like, can we just focus on the bathroom and the ramp? And let's not think about the other aspect, and I don't want to do anything that will cause a problem with the historical nature of the building, but I'm assuming that putting a ramp there on the outside to a door cannot possibly be that damaging to the historic nature of the building. I'm making
There's
that
a way to
assumption.
do, there's a way to do it, and it can be, it would be certified by the proper architect and certify that, and then it has to go to SHPO. SHPO has to sign off, and all that happens even before the county
Right.
commissioners sign a letter that say, you guys are clear to go.
And I'm unclear that building a bathroom also impinges upon the historical nature of the building. So that's what I'm saying, like, I think we need to go back to the historical commission and ask that question. these two items and these two items alone, with the benefit of the grant, do they create any issues that we need to look at, and we need another architect? Let them come back, and then hopefully get it done. Everything else, I think it's going on our ear, frankly. I mean, it's work in progress. but not
That's an
there.
interesting idea.
I just-
I think we should understand the RFP. And I'm interested in seeing what the historical commission would have to say about it. In fact, they have invited the Historical Association of Fairhaven membership to attend a future meeting, like maybe the next one or the next one, if they have a light agenda, just to bring the like minds together. So it'll be a good opportunity to maybe discuss this.
Talk about it together.
So I just would like to say one last thing. One, I'd like to find out if we absolutely need to have that second bathroom. Is that important to the ADA compliance, or can we make the bathroom that exists at this time ADA compliant? And secondly, regardless of what the grant covers, the borough's out of pocket is going to have to pay for the architect and the fees associated. So there will be a cost to the residents. Might be, well, Eli here is $28,000, so we kind of have a ballpark figure of what it's going to be, but there will be an associated cost.
Well, tomorrow night, there's a historic commission meeting. Would love for one of my fellow council members to step up and go to that one, because I'm gonna be traveling for work. I think it's appropriate for somebody to be there in person to brief on this topic. Unfortunately, I can't make it.
Tomorrow night, I won't be able to, if it's okay with you, I feel very personal about this. I've put a lot of time. I think I had 3 days in, so I hope it's okay with you. I would be happy to go, but tomorrow night,
Tomorrow's no good.
I am fully committed.
Okay.
I'm actually a little over.
So the other thing I want to respond to is 16 cents per household per month. That's $65,000. So, and I think you were referring to what's on the first page to cover everything that's not covered by the grant. So that's the answer to your question. I think we can all afford 16 cents. I know it's not really 16 cents because your house is different than Mike's house. And Mike might be a different number than you might be, but it's just not a lot of money when you spread it out over a 20-year period. It's money.
Not, but
It's
every
money.
time we come up with something, you suggest it's going to be another 25 cents, another 30 cents.
Mhm.
And we are
Right.
confined to that 2% levy cap.
Right.
So, you know, what's 2%? Well, what is that, $14? So per household, so.
Yeah.
Well, when it's bonding though, it's different, no?
No, when it's bond, well, it's
That's
$1.97.
But you're not-
Debt service,
You're not
right.
gonna bond for
$1.97 per year.
$28,000. You're not gonna bond for the architectural fees. I mean,
No, the whole thing you would roll into, it's actually already rolled into our bond ordinance. So it's $1.97 a year per household. So I'm not saying it's nothing, but I just want to put it all in perspective for people. I'm not talking $10 or $100 or $1,000. We're talking $1.97 or 16 cents per month. Just back of the envelope, you know, could move around. It's relatively small.
We good? Good here?
I want to make sure we understand, well, perhaps we do. I won't.
Well, I'm coming right back to you because we're at AV for public meeting. Councilwoman Cole.
So I'll kick this off. This is really an open discussion. And a lot of this was triggered by at our most recent outreach and communications committee meeting where we had attend the IT guy that the borough has. And we discussed what his thoughts were. And Betty Ann, and I'm going to credit Allison, took it upon themselves to, if you'll notice, there's some cardboard squares on the walls. And the council has been attempting to understand how to install a slightly upgraded system that would make it possible for us to share documents, drawings, and other things that are being discussed here at the dais with folks that are in the council chamber, as well as folks that are home on a hybrid platform. We think hybrid is going to continue, and we want to be ready for whatever that's going to look like, given whatever circumstances we're faced with, maybe as soon as this winter. So There are 4 monitors. I'm not sure I'm the best person to explain how the interface is gonna work. It clearly involves staff time. There's additional sort of keyboard work that would have to be done. But just to maybe open the conversation to see, what do you think? If there was a screen here, and for example, Mrs. Woods called in, Mrs. Woods could see the dais and we could see Mrs. Woods. And if we put, let's say, a site plan of her property with her chickens, or not her chickens, her neighbor's chickens, up on a screen, it would be here for the members of the full chamber to see, as well as Mrs. Woods at home. That's the idea.
I also want to throw out, I was on that call. We did ask in case we move meetings somewhere else, although they're permanent, it does sound like we could reuse them in an additional space.
Transfer the screens, right, exactly.
My personal feedback is I like it a lot. I actually think that TV should be bigger. if possible.
As
much as I
43
agree.
inches, which Chris had said the other 2 are 55 inches.
I can't.
You
I
will
don't-
not be able to.
I don't think I can see it, oh, honestly.
Well, right here.
That's why we have a,
I know, but even here, I think if Rich has his map.
Oh, you mean even if you swiveled, you think the information on the screen would be too small for you to
If
see?
it's a map or something.
I thought you were trying to stream ESPN.
I think at least here, I mean, I don't know if that's space, but at least here.
it was just a recommendation. We just put it up there for discussion.
Well, that's why we did the
Size.
sizes to see what would fit, and arguably that screen would have to be a bit smaller because you're constrained by the space there. I'm also fine standing up to look at screens, or whoever sits here, I don't know.
Well,
I
keep in
think
mind,
we have
most of what we're gonna have to look at is already in front of you, but what
This is
you'll
to
see
somebody.
a person,
Correct.
exactly.
I mean, I don't know.
Only if
I
they have a
think,
camera. Only if they have a camera.
correct, couldn't they have it on? Yeah. I think it would be a really functional way to continue to communicate and improve transparency. I know, a lot of times people will call me and ask questions about an agenda, and my response is, well, let me pull up what I have in my packet, because what we receive in our packets is different than what is available on the borough website, where it's generally the agenda and the resolutions. So that's something where we would really be able to share a bit more info throughout the course of meetings. We did receive numerous proposals. Some were very costly and involved. Some involved carts with screens on them. This seems to be the most functional. And I think with one click, you would share it to the hybrid viewers as well as the people sitting in the room. So.
How's it feel out there, Kristen?
I mean, I think any progress in the form of technology is progress. I don't think we should get caught up on the side of the monitors. I know, more people would be involved and understand the details and that any kind of technology.
Carolyn.
I feel like you guys should be looking at a PC screen so that you can blow things up and, but I do agree that maybe one screen would alternate things.
Do you think you need 2?
I don't.
That helps. I think that's probably true. I was gonna say the same for here. I mean, that screen, it would be quite a bit small. I often bring my computer so I can look at documents right here. I think doing one larger screen here and maybe one screen in the gallery probably is sufficient as a start. And
True.
The system can be added on to?
Yeah, it sounds like, listen, he seems experienced, capable, and none of this was that challenging. At least that was my take on it when he was presenting.
Well, they do the same thing at the high school,
Yeah,
but he attends every meeting to make sure he
Right,
runs the
he handles it.
technology.
so I think that's it. Yet another job.
I don't think that'll be the case. But- Yeah.
Anything else? we need
Well,
to-
in there, if you want, what we can do is circulate Chris's proposal, what he's suggesting for this chamber, and then.
There's
Put
still
that-
information missing. We still have to get an electrician's quote
Mhm.
to wire everything in.
So why don't we perfect this
There's-
first?
yes,
There's-
yeah.
He was talking double screens, one for presentation and one for monitoring, and it's separate. Which,
Well, let's find out those details. How do we?
Yep.
How do we get that information? Through him? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we'll collect it
Come
and
to the
present
next
it back,
meeting if you
right?
want.
I think it's an initial premise.
Okay.
People
I actually
feel
think
this
it's
is
something,
workable.
it's an expense, but I think it'll pay for itself because I think we might be able to make better decisions based on.
Yeah, just to give people an idea, that we did get 3 proposals and they ranged anywhere from 5,000 to 18,000. What we're looking at here in these walls is in the $5,000 neighborhood. Okay, we'll advance it.
Thank you. Moving along, restaurant ordinance, Greg Cannon, so we'll speak to this.
As you guys will recall, back in May, we had a presentation from the restaurant committee. On the recommendations, materials reviewed from a bunch of discussions with Mike Irene, materials reviewed on the history of this, get myself up to speed a little bit. We have created an ordinance matching along the lines of the memo that was presented to you. So that redo takes out the relatively confusing definitions of restaurants, categories 1, 2, and 3, and functionally defines the restaurants by their setup and use and intensity of use, drive-in windows, fast food restaurants, and then regular restaurants, and then squares up the rest of the zoning code to match up with those definitions. So I don't know if anyone has any particular questions. It's pretty straightforward. This is a workshop to try to work through it. I'll note that Mike Irene and Todd Leader, I sent it to them. You know, I asked this forward to Betsy to send it off to the restaurant committee. I know there was some email circulating about that. So any questions? I think that's what
Councilwoman Chris McKee, want to start from your side?
Sure. One of my questions is related to, and I believe I asked this at the time that we met at Bicentennial Hall. The concept of whether it does or doesn't have tables, or whether it can or the food may be sold for consumption in the building and or off premises. So that distinction is present in the fast food portion of the definition. It's also somewhat part of the restaurant definition. I'm looking at this from a perspective of, is the language all necessary, I guess? Like, do you need that last clause in the fast food restaurant for this to be,
I mean,
you know, what's the import of that sentence, I guess?
well, it's important to be concise in every definition when you have the zoning context. So repeating things or having duplicative clauses isn't necessarily any issue at all. That being said, the reason it's in both is because that's not really the distinguishing feature between a fast food restaurant and a restaurant. So where the food is eaten is whether it's takeout or delivery or whatever, isn't really the distinction. It's really the setup of the restaurant, the intensity of use, the flow of the customers from a zoning perspective, if that makes sense. So I would say to ignore that. That's an important aspect of a restaurant and what it means. And what you might be allowed to do in a restaurant in Fairhaven, but that's not really the distinguishing feature into how the definition is defined. That makes sense. That's
So-
why it appears in bold.
So can you use the same language in restaurant and fast food for that portion? So like in the restaurant definition, it says an establishment or business where food and or beverages are prepared and served or dispensed to patrons and consumed at the establishment and or taken out and or delivered for off premises consumption. And then it has an exclusion, understood. But can you literally use the same language? Because I'm trying to simplify this in my head, right? And you're kind of saying the same thing, and you don't have to answer me right now, because again, I think this is heavy stuff. But I think that last sentence, and maybe I'm wrong, says a lot of the same thing, because having tables means that you can consume it at the establishment, right? Or take it out if you don't have tables. And food or beverage products, again, sold for consumption inside the building and or off the premises. same as and or taken at and or delivered for off-premises consumption. So just from sheer simplicity, and I think the reason, you know, I think that's important is because, you know, when I think about businesses wanting to come to Fairhaven, and you're throwing around ideas with your business partner, whoever, you want to be able to hold these up, look at them, and be able to understand it as simply as possible without professionals. And I think if we can, if the language is the same, then you're saying, okay, well, this part of restaurant and this part of fast food restaurant are the same. So what are the distinctions then? Or maybe I'm missing the distinction, in which case I want to know what I'm missing. The only word that I see that is not in the fast food one is the word prepared, but the fast food restaurant definition also has quickly prepared. So
Right, and that's
again,
the distinction, right? Established in our businesses. I mean, so both, we, who's simplifying it way down. All
Yeah.
restaurants have food, right? Otherwise they're not restaurants. So you could describe 5 different kinds of restaurants in your zoning ordinance. They're all gonna say that they serve food, because otherwise it's not a restaurant. And if you don't say that you can do it, then there's people that argue that you can't do it, right? Because it's not a permitted use, it's prohibited use. So focusing on the duplicative language, I think, is misplaced. You look for the stuff that's not, is one, but not the other. For example, to dispense to customers for quicker ready consumption, a limited, uniform, or standardized variety of food and beverage products, where the menus and practices are covered by a franchise agreement otherwise. So I would really look at the stuff that's different more than the stuff that's the same, if that makes sense.
I'm with you. I think what I'm asking is, can we simplify restaurant and or fast food restaurant by mirroring the language that is essentially saying the same thing?
I mean, I would,
Don't answer me now.
well, I'm just gonna say, it's not, I don't think it's really up to me. I mean, so those definitions are developed over the course of the years by the restaurant committee.
Okay,
And so the specific reasons as to why they use particular words, honestly, I don't know. I largely lifted it from what they had and fixed the grammar for that section. My job was really to fit it into the framework of the rest of the zoning ordinance.
right.
I mean, I know that Betsy's on that committee and sat there the whole time. I don't know. I know that there was a lot of wordsmithing, so I don't know if you could shed light or answer Meg's question, but.
We had a lot of input from Mike Irene.
I'm sorry.
We had a lot of input from Mike Irene on the actual.
Right,
definitions.
what I would like to say is, and I communicated with Todd about this today, is that Mike Irene was not available to come tonight. But he would be more than happy to come, if we can give him enough notice, because he's on several boards, even to come to the next council meeting to answer those very specific questions. But there was some redundancy built into the ordinance.
Which I support. I'm just trying to make it simple. So if it's the same, then you're seeing this is the same. Whereas if you're, I'm an attorney, I read this stuff every day. I can see that some of this language is intended to be the same, but a
Your question
layperson
is
may
why?
not. Yeah, and I'm asking if we can simplify this. And again, that's why I'm saying don't answer me now, because you have to sit there and play with the words, and can we get the same intent and meaning by using the same language in both definitions? Because then you and me sitting around saying, can we put in Joe Schmo's Cafe? You know,
That would
what's
be
the distinction here? You
that
know,
would
we
be a
want to
good question.
simplify, right? So like the whole upshot of all this and the overarching goal, I believe, or part of the goal of the restaurant committee was to create a new understanding of what restaurants are and to allow it to be easily digestible and read and understood, so that we do not end up in a scenario where we have months and months and months of hearings
Right.
over Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
So
I would
Um,
suggest that we reach out to Mike
Yeah.
and ask him to
Sure.
come to the next council meeting.
And
Can we
I,
do that, Teresa?
sure. I would just like to share a couple of comments. First off, I'm deeply appreciative of all the work that members of our community, volunteers, and obviously townspeople have put into this, because I do think there's a fair amount of confusion in the wording of those three definitions, one category. I think we'll have to settle on. And what's been developed here goes a long way to cleaning that up. So it's cleaner than what we have, and that's a good thing. I understand when you're talking about prohibiting, you want to take care to not confuse prohibiting something that you do want. And what I would say about that is taking time to think about what we do want could be a very, very fruitful exercise. It is the basis upon which you build a recruitment strategy for, actually inviting businesses to Fairhaven. It's how you match spaces with potential tenancies. It could be a very, very fruitful exercise for this body, along with the planning board, to consider what we would call our permitted or desired uses, because it also informs the reader. Oh, they like bike shops and ice cream shops and coffee and sidewalk cafes. The intention always with land use ordinances is to set the direction for development such that we're implementing the goals of the master plan. And we're clear about our master plan. It's calm traffic, improve the pedestrian environment, and the overall ability of our rural corridor. This is the tool that we would be adopting so that our zoning officer would have the instrument or tool he needs, in this case, to make that determination. What's prohibited and what's permitted. And if it's not permitted in land use law, then it is understood that it shall be prohibited. So I'll just share that thought, and along with my thanks for the work that's happened.
Councilwoman Net?
No.
Councilwoman Rodriguez?
It's all been covered.
Councilwoman Clark?
I just would like to say one thing from the committee, that our meeting, I believe, was on May 9th, that we held in Bicentennial Hall. And the memo from our restaurant committee was presented, and I know Carolyn was there, the whole committee was there to present the memo. And one of the things we would like the council to know, that our memo intentionally set forth a series of ideas which went far beyond this ordinance. And we would also like to say that while the process of the ordinance is independent of other suggestions, these suggestions, as proposed by the committee, will be presented in other ways to the council in the future. So you can expect to hear more from us.
Thank you. Councilwoman McHugh?
Nothing to add, Mayor, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm sorry, one more thing. I was looking at this list of prohibited uses, and it's kind of the kitchen sink. I don't know if everybody read each and every item. Horse race, dog tracks, peep shows, adult bookstores. It's a pretty extensive list. But oddly, one of the things it doesn't include is warehousing. It's a simple addition. I just bring it to your attention. Maybe Mr. Cannon has. That seems like sort of a straightforward prohibition to include in that this is a fairly comprehensive list.
It's a popular one lately with
Yeah.
storage and stuff. I did notice that after that.
Don't we have a storage facility though? We have one behind Acton.
Well, storage facility is, I don't, maybe let you answer.
At least in the warehouse.
It is?
Yeah. Separate, I mean, that's something that we should probably take up the land use committee as well. Figure that out. And I know that, warehousing is a much increased, is a use that's increased substantially in value the last 5 years.
Well, it's unlikely here, we don't have large tracts of land, and so I mean, nor is it likely we're gonna have a dog racetrack, or, so I just offer it as.
Okay.
I would just, as a last thing on the restaurant definitions, I think it's important that we all read them and consider how our current businesses or businesses that you would like to see in Fairhaven might fit into any one of these different definitions, because it will impact the future of Fairhaven in a pretty significant way, whatever we put into place. So I think it's important that we all are mindful and understand this really well, and what we're signing up for when we ultimately have them on for a vote.
Good. I'm going to move along to public comment on agenda items. This is for agenda items only. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment? Please.
My name is Bill Perkins, 263. In usually my 3 minutes, I'm just going to leave off my questions. I'm just going to read all my questions, then there can be discussion.
My first question is, what is the budget for each of these projects, the DPW and PD? I believe that every council member on the dais should know what the budgets are for these projects. They're on the agenda for tonight. Second question is, what specific changes were made to each of these designs since the 98% documents were presented? And what's the new cost estimate for these for the projects now? I specifically remember Megan, just as an example, I specifically remember Megan suggesting that the stone veneer foundation work for the PD could be eliminated to save money. So I want to know if the architect was directed to make that change. If so, how did it affect the cost estimate? What's the new cost estimate? Question number 3, apparently we had no cost cuts or design saving changes to DPW, that we were going to bid this project out. We're going to put this project out to bid just to see what the cost would be. My concern is why we would do that. And we already have said that this design is too grandiose and we're not going to build it as designed. You know, if we make changes to the project after it's bid, the resulting credit change orders will not provide the same costs as they would if you had not put in the project. Fourth question or statement really is, I do not agree with authorizing the base bid to include the not yet even designed multi-purpose room. We do not have any idea of what the final cost nor the final design will be. Why would we commit to this unseen, uncosted amenity already? The question is, the AE has proposed, the AE's proposal for the multi-purpose room gives no clarity as to the actual deliverables to be provided, nor does it provide a deliverable schedule. Do we get to see the design phases? How many phases? Do we get to see cost estimates? At what phases is the AE paid? Do we give the architect the construction budget for this amenity, or is he just blindly designing? Fifth, do our AE contracts typically provide for cost estimates? How many and at what phases? Specifically, who authorized the architect to proceed to 98% documents on the PD and DPW? And who made the decision that the packages for DPW and PD should be combined as one bid package and one? I'm going to talk.
Thank you.
Some good questions.
I don't know if anyone, from a facility standpoint, if you want to address any of them. I know there's a
The
lot
first
there.
question is the budget.
Is
So I just want to know if
Is it easier if you provide those questions to us and we get back to you? You want to?
well, particularly the budget, everybody on this dais right now should be able to tell me what that number is, because we're going to vote on it tonight. So if you don't know, then I don't know how you can vote on it. To be quite, I mean, I don't need to put flip it, so I just, if we're going to vote on it, we should know, everyone should know what that number is.
Well, actually, there's two ways to go about it, sir. You could either do
And
it.
I first off, I'm sorry, I would just like to preface this by, I am not opposed to any of these projects. I totally recognize we need a new police station and DPW needs to be addressed. So I want to clear the air that I am not by any means opposed to these projects. I just think that we need to get a handle on what they cost.
Sure.
I had a little analogy here that we asked an architect to design a $1 million house. He designed a $2 million house, and now we're going to pay $3 million for that house. So that's kind of where we're at. So.
Understood, and thank you for the context. It's excellent context. Let me start by saying, when we talk about budgets, what we're really trying to do here is understand what is the realistic cost for our needs. Rather than, we could pick a number like 8 million or 10 million or 6 million or 7 million, but I have a salesperson and a lawyer, I have a credit rating person and a retired teacher. I've got an urban planner who aren't skilled in projecting the budget necessarily, and rather we're going to bid to try to understand what are the costs. And so we're taking a ground up approach rather than a top down approach. So when you're going out to buy a house, you know exactly what you want and what you want to spend. Nobody here has built a police department ever. Nobody here has ever built or redesigned a DPW, whether it be brand new or fix it. And so what we're trying to do is get a couple of benchmarks on what the cost is going to be. And we could decide that's just too much money. And so to that end, we might have to go back to the drawing board, and I'm sensitive that previous councils, previous mayors have set out and spent, I don't even know what number, in the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 range in terms of different plans for the Sunoco or 623 River Road, or putting a mega complex where the basketball court is and the tennis courts at the youth field. So there was all these different things. Some of them I sat on this dais, some of them didn't sit on this dais. So we're here now and we're trying to get a grasp on what's realistic for our town. And so I think I want to couple the answer to another question, which is, how did we go from 98% to 100%?
That was really 0 to 98 without knowing how much it was gonna go. Well, not 0, because we had a preliminary estimate, which was $11 million according to Ben Borelli. That's what it was gonna cost. We designed, 98% documents, and now it's not $11 million.
No, it's not, and a lot.
It's not all inflation, and it's not all supply chain issues.
Right.
It's scope creep.
That's right.
There's a lot of scope creep.
So what we're trying to do, and I don't know the answer to how much we're gonna save by taking the stones off of the basement. I don't know the answer to that.
But that's my question.
Yeah.
Was any of that taken into consideration? We're blindly gonna bid out PW without any changes. And then what? If we get it, what if the magic number comes in, it's $8 million? Does that mean we bid it? Because we sit around the table and say, well, 8's a pretty good number. That's all we have, because we don't have a budget. We didn't say how much we wanted to spend. We're at the Mercedes dealer. The salesman says the car's $100,000. We say, okay, write out a check and go home. But really? I can't buy a car like that.
Well, actually, it'll be the decision of the 6 folks up here on council, whether it's a viable approach for the town. And I don't know that I only own American cars. I can't tell you about Mercedes-Benz or dealers or anything like that. But what I will say is, we're gonna think about it. We're gonna look at what the numbers come back. Probably not do the DPW based on the consensus that's been up here lately. We're gonna go forward with the. Well, the way that the documents were structured originally a year ago, I know you invoked Mayor Lucarelli's name. This council directed the architect to start developing documents so that we can go to bid. And those were combined because there were economies of scale. We're trying to save money.
There were also economies of scale architectural. So did we reap any of the benefits of that architecturally? Because now we only have one bid package. We have one specification.
It would have
one
cost,
set of details.
it would have cost us more to unbundle them.
The unbundled, but when we
At the
we
time.
got
that the
proposals
decision-
from the architect to do PV, we got a proposal from the architect to do DPW. So if we said yes to this and said yes to this, there would be 2 different proposals. So the fact that we decided to combine.
We did.
them, did we reap any benefit in?
At this
combining
point,
proposals?
this
Not at
count,
this point, even then, when we agreed to combine them.
the answer is marginal, but yes. Because if you create a list of concrete that you need for 2 separate projects and you put them into one list,
I'm well aware. But
Yeah,
there
you're
should be
gonna
cost savings, there should be cost savings that we see.
Yeah.
Also, architecturally, we're saying that the documents are 98% complete. No cost savings if we scrap the job. The 2% that he didn't do, we don't get to see that. We pay for that anyway.
well, the 2% isn't,
2%.
it wasn't.
Because it's the full proposal, it's the bid bond, it's the specifications, it's all the rest of that we're not putting in. We're not.
I'm not following you, but what I would say is, There is a long history of retrading and rehashing and shelving stuff to the point where we're now at. Do we stop everything? Do we try to separate them off and incur more costs? And the answer is, these folks around me decided that's a bad idea in the last meeting. We all said, it's all intermeshed. We can just do the police department, whether they bid on the DPW or not. And so what we're really focused on is the police department. We would break off the DPW and understand what the cost might be if we built brand new, but that's just informational to us so that we can focus on the police department, because that's really what our priority is right now. I think a couple of council people said that earlier.
I would like to jump in and just say I really appreciate your questions. They're very much along the line of the questions that I had a couple meetings ago. I was not a participant in that workshop discussion when we decided to put everything out to bid. I withheld my comment because I was so stunned. I was so stunned to find out that our construction documents on DPW were at 98%. I was so flummoxed, I honestly couldn't participate in that workshop discussion.
So that was one of my questions. So who authorized to get to 98%? And do we have
The previous
what
council.
do our architectural contracts say? What's our payment schedule for the aid? Preliminary, 25, 50, 100% CDs, or what? And who authorizes them? Who authorizes those payments? How do we write it? Who decides that these documents are 100% or 98% or 50%? Who's making that decision?
Who's making the decision that the
architect
documents
paid
are?
for 50% documents.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, at some point, there's a design phase, and after design phase comes the construction documents phase. And then we put it out to bid, that was put together as a package. But those increments are times when you would review the budget, what has happened, do we agree with it, do we want to shave anything off, do we want to revisit anything? That's how you move a project forward like this.
Eli's proposal for the multi-purpose room, $26,750 in total. He puts pen to paper for 3 seconds. He sends us a bill for $26,750 because there's no, I've never seen an architectural contract where there's no fee schedule. Preliminary designs, you submit preliminary designs, you approve preliminary designs, I can pay you 25%. You submit 50% documents, they're approved, I pay you 50%. We don't say that. He doesn't say in here where you can get, we should be grateful that we're going to get a cost estimate if we get a cost estimate. Blows my mind. Why wouldn't we have that in our contracts that we get cost estimates and when these people are being paid what we expect them to pay? And he, as the architect, should want us to sign off on the documents because if we change our minds, that puts him off the hook. We can have it both ways. We don't ask for anything, we don't get anything, he just builds and builds and builds.
And we keep asking for it, is really the point. And we keep going.
Shame on us.
And we
It's
go
my
from,
point. Shame on us.
we go from Sunoco to 623, we go from 623 to the tennis courts and the basketball court. We go from there to building the parking lot.
Okay.
And so it was, if you may, let me just respond to your original question. How did we get here?
No, I'm well aware of how we got
Yeah,
it.
there were a lot.
And
I might have been the only one who's still surviving all of those various iterations that's sitting up here on the dais. And I can tell you're frustrated, but I can also tell you I'm more frustrated than you are because I am sick and tired of going back and delaying and retrading and spending more of my money because I pay taxes in this town just like everybody else. So I can appreciate your frustration and you can probably sense I'm additionally as frustrated as you are.
I totally appreciate the frustration, but I just feel like we didn't learn any lessons. We didn't learn a lesson.
There's no accountability.
When we decided on Sunoco, then we didn't learn a lesson that we decided on tearing down perfectly good building, you know?
My question, how do we hold the previous councils or the previous mayors accountable? They're here volunteering their time, and there's gonna be some people that are sitting here that in 2 or 3 years aren't gonna be here anymore. I don't know that you really can hold them accountable, other than they're donating their time and they're trying to do the best that they can. My suggestion is that we try to move this whole thing forward and try to get the police department built.
Correct.
Yeah.
With that said, so then why are we bidding on DPW?
Because
In a futile effort to
I can answer that.
exercise for contractors to waste their time.
I
for
can
the
answer
architect
that.
To waste his time. If Eli is listening to this, he knows he doesn't even have to give us a complete set of documents because we're not gonna build it.
It would
So,
cost,
let's leave out all the details.
it would
Bases and
cost,
whatever it is.
but the reason why is because everyone sitting up here decided that it would cost more to separate those two off, and we didn't want to incur any more costs, which is
I
really
get
your
that,
point.
But I'm saying, my question is, why are we bidding it out?
Because in order to put the package out there, it's all already integrated. And that was a decision that was made a year
We're
ago.
getting this a separate thing to begin with. We say delete all reference to DPW, not in contract.
We had a public conversation that everyone here was present for. And we said, we actually want to know what it would cost to build the DPW, even though we may not do it. It doesn't cost us.
That's my.
It doesn't
Your
cost
operator
us.
there may not do it. Are we gonna do it? Because if we're not gonna do it, it's a futile exercise. That's a waste of everyone's time, including the engineer who then has to review these documents and whatever else.
Not to mention separate cost estimates that will come back to us bundled.
Well, it's nice to know if we have a chance to get a data point at no cost. That's really what we decided. We want to know what it would cost to build it new, so we can compare that number to what it's going to cost to renovate the building. Under your proposal, we would be in the dark and wouldn't know what it costs. Hold on,
In our
let me-
proposal, I would have had the architect.
One second, let me finish. Under your proposal, we would be in the dark and we wouldn't know what it would cost we wouldn't know what the savings is for the taxpayer. We wouldn't know what the cost would be to build new versus what it would cost to renovate. And we want to know what that number is as
Wow,
prudent.
because that's not how you obtain cost estimates. You don't put projects out to bid to get a cost estimate. That's not how it's done in the industry, and that's not how it's done in the public sector. I've spent 38 years in the public sector, working for the city of New York as a project manager in the capital projects division. This is why I'm frustrated. For the city of New York, we are not the city of New York. Project does not move forward unless the funding is in place, there is a budget, and there's a reconciliation between the budget and the cost estimate. If the architect comes in with a design that's $4 million over budget, back to the drawing board, come back in line with the budget. Once the budget and the cost estimate are reconciled, then the project will have to go. We don't have budgets, so we just blindly pitch things out and then.
We have no obligation at all to vote to approve any bids that come in.
I think the other thing I want to mention, Bill, and we spoke earlier today.
I appreciate this, it's way more than my 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. As Councilwoman Cole mentioned, she was surprised to learn that the construction documents were as far along as they were. I think that was news to some of us. Be that as it may, they were. And we were having discussions of renovating versus rebuilding, doing all the site work versus not doing the site work. And rather than say, no, let's absolutely, and I should only consider the current procedural posture, because what has happened in the past, before past governing bodies, is extraordinarily difficult to deal with. You inherit a lot of things when you're elected, and the status is the status, right? So part of what we said was, if we go back and the same cost, 3, 6, 9, I don't know how long it's gonna take to do new plans, of what we think will be cheaper is then the same as taking the plans that we already have, 98% already done, and seeing what that costs. Shouldn't we just see what it costs? And I'm not disputing what you're saying, that procedurally, this is all backwards. I get that.
At the very least, I don't agree with the procedure.
Yeah, I
But even if
understand.
we were to do that procedure, why wouldn't we take the cost savings considerations
Yes,
into effect to tell the architect, delete the stone, delete the whatever.
I agree with you.
Delete the whatever.
I agree
and now
with you.
put it out to bid.
I agree with
He
you.
doesn't have to spend a lot of time. It should be a change order. He should be able to exit out. Again, I'm not sure what we bought in our AE contracts, but like I said, if this is what we're buying, if his proposal, these 6 lines is all we have in his proposal, then we need to review our AE contracts seriously, because there is, good for him is what I say, because he's made evidently $600,000, where's his cash cow, good for him. Bad for us.
Bill, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Is there anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please stand up. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Steve Garcia, Madison Avenue, Fairhaven.
Hi, Steve.
I've been living in this town all my life, and I want to tell you right now, it's time to put the brakes on with this money spent. Okay, like I tell the guys at the firehouse, right? Spend that money like you spend your own money, and they won't spend a damn dime. I tell them, stop swimming with the borough money, right? Here's the thing, you're talking about spending millions and millions of dollars on these buildings, right? We don't even have enough guys in Fairhaven to run public works. What do you got, 3 men working there? You used to have like 10. Okay, it'd probably be a better thing to merge with Rumson and throw all these guys together, right? And the other thing is, you're talking about spending all this money. I don't even have a curb on my property. There's nobody in this room that does not have a curb on their property, okay? When Earl Asphalt did that street in 2008, there was supposed to be a curb on both ends of that street, which there is by Providence. I don't even have a curb in front of my property. So I'm just telling you right now, it's time to put the brakes on. As far as the public work, the police station, what's the matter with the police station? It was redone in 92, and now you want to redo, what do you want to knock it down and rebuild the youth center? We went to kindergarten there. There was 4 classes of kids that went there every day. What is the problem with the police station? It's been renovated twice. You had the lowest bidders come in. The first time in the police station in 93, when we had that December storm, Ricky Tower told me to stop down there because he had some work for me, right? For trees, right? I walk in the police station. The thing is full of carbon monoxide. I said, Ricky, Jesus Christ, what's going on in here? The idiots that put the heating system in the generator in the public, in the police station, didn't even put the stack going outside the wall. I said, Ricky, you gotta shut that thing down, it's gonna kill you. The second time Joe was here, the town had a heating system put in. The guys left the cardboard sheets around the thing. We get a fire call at the police station. We get over there, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Next thing you know, I said, Marty, the flames are bursting through the roof of the police station. You were there then, right, Joe? So I mean, all this money, right? Right now, we're in the worst shape in this country we've ever been in. And I hope all you folks heard the APA message on Friday night, 7:15 on the radio. To prepare for nuclear attack. We don't even have a civil defense anymore. This was from the OEM in New York City. It was on the radio at 7:15 on Friday night. They were saying it wasn't a test. It was to prepare for a nuclear attack. And you know what that attack's gonna be? It's not gonna be in New York. It's gonna be in Earl, either Leonardo or Cold Lake. We're gonna be right there. And if it is in New York, we're in that circle. So I think it's time to put the brakes on all this money spending, because the stock market isn't in too good a shape either. And a lot of this money in this town is not, and who up here is gonna benefit from all this spending? Up here, the folks sitting up here. Who's gonna benefit from spending all this money? Tell me that, all right? I'd like to know.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else here that has a comment? Carol, please state your name and address.
I'm Carolyn Ferguson, 7 Colonial Court. I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of the Business Association. I really ask that you consider this restaurant ordinance very carefully. It really has the potential to be extremely impactful.
on our business community and what the future of our business districts will be like. I think when the restaurant committee presented, I think this is the same language that we spoke to that night. Is that right? Yeah, so, like I talked, Michelle talked, we brought forth comments, but none of that seems to have been incorporated in the proposal. So I don't know if that means our input was rejected or what that means, but, we continue to ask for simplicity and clarity in ordinances. That's extremely important to the business district. Then we want to, we really ask that you think, like, read the words very carefully and imagine different scenarios. So like if Rook Coffee comes and applies to come to Fairhaven, is that desired or not desired? And if it's desired, can they get through this ban? If not, then we're banning them, and that's okay, but we just need to be clear on what we're doing. Same thing, consider if Gianni's Pizza wants to come, play out the whole, look at the words, do they meet? Are we letting them in or are we banning them? And then if we're banning all these smaller chains, we have to consider what's left and what we'll have. So we're really asking you to consider this extremely carefully. The last thing we'd like you to consider is, like, what processes does this ban imply for the borough? The ordinance mentions that one of the reasons you could not qualify is because you're subject to contracts of certain types. Does that mean on our zoning permit application, we're going to ask applicants to attach all their contracts, franchise agreements? Do we expect our zoning officer to then read them and determine the intention of those contracts? So, there's a lot implied in the words that are presented in that ordinance. And, as the business association, what we're looking for is simplicity in language in the ordinances and in the processes, and the ability to navigate them simply without a large amount of professionals and with some transparency from the town. So I just ask that you consider our input very carefully. We've spoken before, I'm speaking now. We hope that we'll be able to take some steps forward to have an ordinance that we all agree with.
Thank you, Carolyn. Is there anyone else that's present that has a comment? Teresa, is there anyone on
Is
the
any
Zoom?
member who's on Zoom would like to speak on agenda items, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized. So far, so nobody's raised their hand.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to approval of minutes. July 11th, 2022 regular meeting, July 11th, 2022 executive session. Anyone have a motion to approve?
Motion, second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Chris McKee,
Yes.
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Reddish.
Yes.
Thank you. Old business, moving along to a readoption of ordinance number 2022-10. It's a multi-purpose bond ordinance. There's no change to this. There was an issue with filing the supplemental debt statement via the state FAST system. Does anyone have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Chris McKee,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to new business, council committee reports, starting in finance with Councilwoman Neff.
There's not much to report. We did not meet this past month because we didn't think there was anything major on the agenda. Councilman Rodriguez, is there anything you'd like to?
We met today though.
Yeah, we discussed today the issue on the PDA negotiations, and we were asked to comment on that.
It's on tonight's executive session.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. So that's pretty much the only item beyond the discussions on the buildings that we've been having actually at the council level.
Thank you, Councilwoman Neff. Moving along to personnel, Councilwoman Chris Matthews.
Thank you. We have 2 new hires on the consent agenda today. One is Lisa Pantaleo for the tax and finance office assistant, and the second is a temporary seasonal DPW laborer. So I'm looking forward to having additional support for the borough.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We're going to go to planning and zoning, followed by parks and recreation with Councilwoman Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. The planning board met last week with the zoning board, and as a result, was the resolution, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it resolution. The restaurant ordinance that was discussed during the workshop session. The next zoning board meeting is scheduled for August 4th, and the next planning board meeting is scheduled for August 16th. In terms of recreation, camp has 1 week to go. It's been a very successful 4 weeks so far, and the weather has been extremely cooperative, if not a little bit too hot, but not a lot of rain. Concerts on the dock will continue, and next Wednesday, August 3rd, the band will be Not a Band. It will start at 7 p.m. and will include hits from the 60s to the 90s. And there was no meeting for rec in July, and our next meeting will be, I didn't write down the date, but it will be August 2nd. And that is it, Mayor.
That's the name of the band, though, not a band.
KNOT.
It's a band, though.
Yeah,
Got
but
it.
its
Okay.
name is KNOT,
Got it.
a band,
Okay.
unquote.
Gonna move along to police, fire, and OEM, and engineering and DPW, Councilman McHugh.
Thank you, Mayor. For the police, did you say that?
No,
No, all right, so for the police, our police is hosting National Night Out, August 2nd. Come on out, meet our police officers. Should be a great night. For fire, I just want to call out that we appointed her previously, but she just completed, I get this from the chief, so I get it right.
Feldman girl.
Yes, she completed firefighter 1 and 2, the academy. So she is, regular firefighter. She's the second woman in her town to complete that. And perhaps, third or fourth. Let's go. Kristen Felsen became the second Fairhaven Fire Department woman to graduate from the Fire Academy. Not only did she complete both the firefighter 1 and 2 classes, she served as squad leader. She also graduated top of her class and was presented the Captain Fitzpatrick Award for her outstanding academic achievement and exemplary performance. Most of all, she continues the Felsman tradition, the legacy as a 4th generation volunteer. So I love to see that. Having congratulations to her, the Felsman. I know her father, grandfather, very proud of her for keeping that tradition going. And leave it at that. Engineering DPW, we have the grant application coming up. Rich, August 15th, we're going to see the 3rd Street plans.
Give or take, yes, yeah, I've been working on those.
Great, thank you. So we have a lot of road projects in the queue. No new updates, and we're still on track. Oh, we did get that last minute piece of paper from Savola regarding the paving of River Road. Construction will tentatively start on 8/8 and should be completed by 8/16. Again, well ahead of the fair. Mill and pave, stripe, electrical work. So additional communication will go out to residents, business owners, Board of Ed, fire department, but I just wanted to also call that out here. I know it's been a long time coming, but it was highly coordinated. Thank you, Rich, and working with the county, the water company, everyone, and we kind of stayed on top of it. So that'll be great when that's done, and looking forward to our next project. Third Street and then Fairhaven Road, we'll just keep it going.
I forwarded that letter to you, showing the joint.
Awesome, thank you. And Rich, is there any update on the sewer pipes for Willow Street? Finish that out.
Oh,
Have you
Willow
heard it?
Street paving.
The Willow Street paving.
I talked to the contractor, Fernandez. We're gonna walk the site either this week or next week, and they're gonna get in and get it done before school's in session.
All right, that's also because we were kind of postponing it to after, this was like the week after, before camp starts, and now camp's wrapping up.
Yeah, I think the timing is falling.
School is kind of blooming. So hopefully we can get that done before school starts. That'd be great.
Thank you, Councilman McHugh. Borough Facilities, Councilman Rodriguez.
Sure, want to thank all the folks in the public who reached out about Bicentennial Hall this week. Got a number of inquiries on that. Want to thank Mr. Perkins for showing up, not only with his comments, but also putting it together in an email and structuring that nicely. So I appreciate that, sir. Always welcome, and any help you can give us as we go along the path, I welcome that as well. I think we are on track for making some progress rather than redesigning for the 8th time. So hopefully we can make some progress here with some bid specs and hopefully put a shovel in the ground at some point soon.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving along, Councilman Cole, Borough Communications, Community Outreach.
Thank you, Mayor. Outreach and Communications met last week. I think. We reviewed the AV proposal. We're going to try to push that along with the goal of having that in place, some installation in place, but before the winter hits. Again, I'll just reiterate, the goal is to attempt with our constant contact, yet to be named, brainstorming. Anyone have any good ideas? We're looking for a real good name for the constant contact thing that we sent out. Variant Connects is an idea. A couple of other ones, Borough Blast, just to get your creative juices flowing. We really would like any suggestions you have. We're making great progress expanding the contacts we have. We're at 60%. The goal is really to get as close to 100% as we can get. Most people are clicking and reading, and that's great. And we're just looking to increase that. So sign up. If you see a QR code coming from the borough, scan it. Most likely, that's also the sign up option. It's the only QR code that I believe the borough has right now. So. The Environmental Commission is on a recess, but in September, they're going to take up the Normandy Park issue, or the Normandy Park, and begin to explore and understand that project, and inviting the community to come and participate if you're interested. The Shade Tree Commission is also having a July recess, but they're looking forward to a meeting in August. The Green Team continues to work on sustainable Jersey goals. And in August would be a report period where we have to get back to the chairperson with some updates with the goal of trying to reach silver. They're also launching or doing a kind of a pilot project for a film series. So look for something on August 18th. There's a film called Kiss the Ground. It's a conservation film. They're going to show it next to Bicentennial Hall on August 18th at sunset. It's a 45-minute educational film, but untold, it's a very lovely story. This is simple. Bring a blanket, give your kids a bath, come out in your pajamas, and watch a film together. Maybe buy some popcorn. Let's see. I just want to respond from the Fairhaven Business Association as the liaison. I want to respond directly to what Carolyn has offered and say that I share your concerns about it being simple and straightforward. While what is written is definitely clearer than what we've had before, ways in which we can make it simpler is a very good thing. And I'll reach out separately. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving along to introduction of ordinance 2022-11, amend Schedule C, minimum lot size of the R-7.5 zone, 7,500. Does anyone have anything they want to ask on this? We good? Does anyone have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Chris Marquis.
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Hearing and adoption will be listed on the September 6th agenda. Moving on to the consent agenda, we're talking about resolutions 2022-161 to 2022-174. Does anyone have any resolutions they want to separate from the consent agenda before?
Mayor, I would like to pull 2022-170, 2022-171. I also would like to have discussion on 2022-162.
Okay. Why don't we start with 2022-162, approve NJDOT FY 2023 grant application improvements to Fairview Road Phase 2.
Thank you. My request is to have discussion briefly about the general scope of this Fairview Road Phase 2. I would like to know if the resolution of support, which is I believe what you're looking for to accompany the grant application. Is that right, Rich, Teresa?
Yeah, it's a requirement.
Yeah, so I would like to expand the language a little bit to include limits of work, meaning I think we roughly know it's from Carter Pond area to Ridge. We're talking about milling and paving, some curb work, some pedestrian crossings. But I don't think that that's written.
Resolutions and template from DOT that we use, that we have to use.
Yeah, well, I'm suggesting we expand it, maybe even in the title of the resolution alone. The reason being, I think we should understand generally, I realize it's just from the outset and the grant. Based on ultimately, how we spend the grant, will be based on what you draw up and the survey right away. I think that there isn't any language to describe even broadly what it is. We want that to handcuff any aspect of the work that you want to see done, such for, say, for example, pedestrian crossings. I know you're aware of this. Mike and I sit on DPW and engineering with you, and you're very aware of it. However, it's not spelled out here in the title of the resolution or anywhere in the resolution.
We went over this in the last workshop, and we went over this in the last workshop, it's in tonight's minutes. Rich talked about the general scope of work and what's submitted to the NJDOT for a grant like this is just done online, and they don't require us to do anything in the resolution except adopt the support for what's been submitted, which went over last week. I don't know what.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, I think what we learned on Hanson Cooney is we can subtract. So my question, which might make this go faster, can we add? Like if you submit for a grant, but something's not in that application, for instance, and you want to add a crosswalk, is that something that wouldn't be included then? I think that's what I was hearing.
That's generally it.
Yeah, that's generally, once again, at the time of the grant, the project is conceptual in nature. So even the language of the grant touches upon the various improvements that we would look to be doing on that corridor. Your question is specific to this resolution, which is it's really just a housekeeping item as part of the grant, which is required for NJDOT 30 days to get that submitted from submission of the grant, which is July 1.
So remind me, did you say crosswalks when we talked about Fairview Road Phase 2?
I talked about sidewalks and things of that nature, and obviously with sidewalks and ADA improvements, crosswalks fall into that category.
Right, even though in certain sections we don't have sidewalks, but we still might want to explore a pedestrian crossing of some type.
Yeah, I mentioned I put in quantities for sidewalks, not knowing right of way width and not putting pen to paper, pace mapping, things of that nature to see what can really fit along that corridor. And obviously talk to the community and the neighbors that live there.
And
think
there,
that's
that's
my-
reflected in minutes.
Is
From
that
the
all
you
we
adopted
need?
today. That with the governing body is desires of crosswalks at Buttonwood. And then Councilwoman Chris McKee said there's also a possibility of a crosswalk further down Fairhaven Road. And, you know, Rich submitted for $694,000. You know, we won't get anywhere near that in the grant.
I'll be optimistic.
Well, even if we got half, our highest grant ever has been $350. So, you know, there'll be plenty of time for Rich to do, you know, once we get the grant and once we approve bond ordinance, I would imagine he'll be designing this in 2024. And at that particular time, you know, it will go through the committee first and then come to the full governing body. And just like we did with Pants and Cooney, you can, you know, play with the design at that particular point.
I'm just trying to guard the public's option to address certain aspects of road work. I want to keep the options open. And if doing that in the resolution helps, then that's why I brought it up. If you're saying it's in the minutes and it doesn't need to be in the resolution, that's
It doesn't
fine.
need to be a resolution.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt all of the consent agenda except for set 170 and 171. 1 second.
170 and 171. A second.
Okay.
Also, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Chris McKee?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
McHugh?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to 2022-170, approved borough architect proposal and multi-purpose room to storage building.
So I can start the discussion if I would like, in keeping with the concerns that I shared a couple meetings ago and that were expressed this evening by Mr. Perkins and others, I would like to see us rework this proposal. I want to say that I am in favor of doing the work here in this location. I think advancing funds for community center is essential, and I'm fully supportive of it. I think the proposal leaves out a few things, and it also doesn't stipulate deliverables and sign off. So, and I realize we have sort of timing issues, but I think what he's being asked to do there is not overly time consuming, but there is some things he needs to spend time on. For example, there probably does need to be a meeting with our IT guy, and that our IT guy could probably talk to all our department heads to understand what those needs are. I think we should evaluate storage needs and understand exactly where things will be stored and what would be left in the rooms. Just basic programming of the space. It hasn't happened, but I think that's a simple ask. And he could come here and say, you know, you've got 15 tables, and when they're folded, they can live here. And then when you stand up, you'll have seating for X, Y, Z, and then we get to sign off on that. And at that point, there'll obviously be compensation. But I would like to go through that process and make sure that his contract also addresses those two things. I have to look at my notes. If someone else would like to pick up the discussion, I'll find my other comments.
Yeah. Oh, I was looking at something else while Councilwoman Cole was speaking, but I think it would be fair to ask the architect to go back and look at these numbers when we've already paid for site work for the storage shed, and now we're gonna pay another $7,500 for site work to come out 30 feet. Seems a little like he's checking a box, and I think there needs to be some oversight there. So I'm not sure what Councilwoman Cole was getting at, but I think, you know, certainly we need to hold the eye to a little bit more accountability. $7,500 is just one of the many things that sticks out to me as alarming, the fact that we've already paid for site work essentially for the building already with the storage garage, OEM garage, and it's the same site. So why do we need to pay another $7,500 for site work there, unless he's just trying to throw, check the standard boxes. But taking into consideration how we got here, I don't know if that's reasonable. Maybe it is. I'm certainly not an engineer. That was just one call that I had, but Mr. Perkins brought some good points as well. I think he writes these and then, we come back with our accountability built in as well. And then see what he wants from there.
Councilwoman Tosh?
I have nothing to add.
I can support delaying this another meeting and just having a little bit more information.
Nothing to add.
Sounds reasonable. Yeah, that we have set parameters. for-
Yeah,
So we'll table 170 until the next meeting.
and maybe we can work together to set some incremental sign-offs so we can understand what it costs along the way, that we all agree on what is being planned and go to the next step after that,
Right, payment schedule tied to for that completion of work.
as well as estimates.
Right.
I'm not clear on what you want me to go back and ask you, a revised proposal, you want me to come to your next meeting? You want to meet with the subgroup? I don't really know what you just.
Well, how about, why don't I just come to your office and break it down and look at it together so that you know what to ask it for, or which. What we want to do is structure a sequence of deliverables, not just, go do it all and then get back to us when you're done.
So you want to sequence the deliverables from Eli and a timeframe tied to it?
Yeah.
And payment schedule tied to the deliverables. So upon completion of each parameter, then we'll receive payment for that. But I would assume.
That's how he does his billing. For every bill you've seen, he puts a percentage of work completed to.
Right. It's usually just memorialized, I think is the point.
It is.
Teresa, wasn't there an email from Eli today about the building that his?
Yes, he said that he, from a timing perspective, he felt that the design would be in the bid package as opposed to being done as an addendum.
Meaning he didn't want to put the entire thing on the bid.
No, I'm talking about the rear, the new community space. And if you look at our resolution, we have in there, as per your instructions last meeting, that the multi-purpose room changes to PD will be sent to bidder as an addendum unless it is done prior to going out to bid. And his answer to that today was he felt it would be completed prior to going out to bid. And that wouldn't be till sometime in September.
We recommend holding off bidding until the multi-purpose room can be included in the initial bid package. Right. Okay, so does that change our discussion on 2022-171?
Did he say why?
He said that it was based on the bidders need at least a couple of weeks after that information is given to them, whether in the initial bid package or by addendum.
But I'm saying, did he say why we should hold off and put it all together?
Because it's almost done.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, we told you.
Therefore, even if we were to issue the bid package without the information said August 1st, we will still not be able to open the bids until the first or second week in September.
We gave this body gave him clear
Didn't we
instructions.
tell them?
Yes,
There's
we
a
did.
proposal right here, you guys.
We did.
Good thing is that the slowing economy is yielding reductions in materials costs. Therefore, for the first time in months, it is possible that by waiting a little, prices might moderate a bit. So do we, can we move on from 2022-171 then as well?
Let's
Do you
table
know-
that
Right?
because of the.
Because of,
Mayor, can I just call something out though? On 171, even if we go forward and table it, I think we need to correct it. We had a lot of discussion about the order of alternates, and there was some conversation about how you got to prioritize, and then our council said that you don't have to prioritize, and I don't know if there was a clear answer to that. But from my understanding, going back and looking at the meeting and the minutes, kind of briefly go over it. You know, I think we agreed that Council Cronin clarified was going to authorize the bid, the police department and the DPW as an alternate. OEM storage, flex space, and also improvements will be future addendums. Okay, so and also if you go back to the meeting and around like minute 139, hour and 39 minutes, we clarified that it's PD. And then first alternate is alternate 7-1. Multi-purpose room changes to the police storage building will be sent to bidders as an addendum. We're pausing on that because it's going to be done. So package with the police department. Great. The second bullet should be the DPW project will be bid as the first alternate, and the off-site improvements should be the second alternate. That was what we agreed upon last meeting.
I think the offset improvements though, was that the parking lot?
It's
No,
a
there's
sidewalk and stuff.
Curb line, widening the street, lining it for the police department.
For the police department.
And we could,
The offsite improvements, the PD is where you discuss the Rich brought in the widening of the road and, you know,
Straightening.
the straightening of that and the fact that from a parking and safety perspective, it was important that they, you know, that's why they're in there is the first alternate. If you're.
so that changed though, because we agreed upon in the meeting that this first alternate would be the DPW project. And then I think Rich asked, what do we do about the offsite improvements? Do we want to do that? Yeah, you can put them in, but it was not directed that they would, offsite improvements would be the first alternate. So I don't know how that changed. I just want to kind of retouch base on that, because from what I'm hearing, the order that the alternates are in matters. Is that correct?
Public contracts law, and our attorney can chime in. It does not tell the bidder what the priorities are. It's your base bid and then you have alternates. So you have those alternates give you that gives you flexibility to award your bid as you see fit. So you could pick, you have to award the base bid, and then you could pick alternate 2 and 4, or 1 and 2, or however you structure it.
Do
So it
they
doesn't
see,
matter.
do they see a precedence based on how you list it though, where they might,
I mean, normally you would, do we have the Fish Street improvements as alternate 1?
in other words, if it's alternate 4, will they not put their best foot forward and they're spending more time on alternate 2 because they think that's your priority?
I understand Councilman McHugh's point, but I think the way this is written makes some sense because the PD site is obviously the base bid. The multi-purpose room is at the PD site. The off-site improvements on Fisk is adjacent to the PD site. The DPW is the next alternate, and then the off-site for the alternate for Maple Avenue is the last item. So it kind of is in somewhat of an order, but you can certainly make that change if you want.
I don't know if it's material either. It seemed like it was somewhat inconclusive. I think the laws on how to bid New Jersey have changed or maybe relaxed a bit. That was the impression I was getting. So I'm not sure. I know it used to be very strict, like, and you know, there's lots of maybe conflicting directions on this. Like, so for example, the order of the alternates essentially do not matter. Is that correct?
As far as I'm aware, and all the projects I've bid, they do not matter. But what I was saying was the way they're the way they're outlined in the resolution kind of falls into place based on the sites.
Right, and I get it, like,
It's not all over the
the
place.
general consensus is the police area
Yeah,
and
priority.
that offsite improvements, that's police departments with.
Which ones were you looking to flip flop?
The offsite improvements and the DPW project. And again, I'm not sure if it's material, if it matters. If it doesn't matter, then I don't care. I just.
They're
kinda
last
want-
anyway.
You mean the one with the Fish Street offsite improvements?
That's
Slide
last.
that down.
Oh, right. And maybe we're splitting hairs here. I'm not sure if it matters, but if it does matter, I want to get it right.
The first alternate is the improvements we're looking to do on Fisk Street. That's to realign that curb line as it approaches Maple,
As listed down.
as listed now.
My understanding from last meeting was that the first alternate should be the DPW, so. You know, I went back and checked the tape, and I'm still kind of under that impression. So if something changed from what the governing body agreed upon to now, I just kind of want to call it out and make sure. If maybe we were in a consensus and we want to keep the change. I just want
It
to.
doesn't sound to me that it matters. And grouping them all together might make sense. I don't know that people are not going to bid on it. I mean, they're looking at this entire site and then to do DPW and then jump back to that other site. I don't know. I'm gonna have to
I
defer to-
appreciate that you asked the question. I do see the idea of keeping
Yeah.
these alternates connected to the base bid and then putting DPW behind that, since these three things have to do with the PD. Or these two bad alternates have to do with the PD.
And we can pick and choose, right? We have to obviously pick the base bid.
Yeah,
Now, say company A base bid is $5 million higher or lower. But I'm just trying to say, like, cumulatively, if company B's overall price is lower, but company A's base bid price is lower. Kind of confusing myself here. Do we have to go with
You have.
whoever has the lowest base bid? We have to go. with
No, you can pick the options and you check the lowest bidder.
You award to the lowest responsible bidder for the base bid. In your packets, once we take bids, we're gonna structure, we're gonna have a spreadsheet. It's gonna give you that menu of if you award base bid plus alternate one, it's this much. It's base bid plus all, all the different scenarios. So you're gonna see, and yes, bidder A, B, C, D, and E, it might change a little bit if you award base bid plus alternate one and alternate three. Might be one bidder, and then it might be another bidder if you award just the base bid or just the base bid and one alternate.
Yep, no, that
helps clarify.
When we did the streetscape project that's finishing up now, we had two alternates. We had the decorative crosswalks and we had the street light. So it was the same type of scenario. So when we made a recommendation of award, we broke that out in a spreadsheet for the governing body at the time. So they could see if you go with this, it's this much, and so on. And something like that, obviously that project was awarded based on a bill.
where are we on the agenda? I'm lost.
So we just finished the consent agenda. We're moving now to department reports.
Wait, I don't think we're done.
We're discussing 171.
we
Yes.
tabling
We tabled
We're tabling
171.
171.
Through a motion and a second, and we agreed.
And
Was 171 the proposal from Eli for the
No,
multi?
that's
no,
not the-
171 is the
Okay.
authorizing bid.
So then I'm here. we went through a number of suggestions during the one meeting that we had, Mr. Goldstein. And there were, the council was clear that we wanted to see some cost reductions. Spend some time making some suggestions. Those, to my knowledge, and I don't know if this is true, but to my knowledge, none of those suggestions were incorporated, and I'm not sure anyone on Eli's team took the time to look at any kind of value engineering. So I think we should consider having Legacy do some value engineering. I don't know what they have they done anything for us yet?
Yes, I sent an update today on what they have done to date.
Legacy?
Yes, and we did not, in their proposal, we did not include any type of cost estimate considerations.
Value engineering.
We're
really
value
different.
engineering. I'd have to get a proposal for them to do that.
What exactly will they do as an owner's rep, if not that?
They would, but in the scope of services that the borough narrowed down when they hired them, they picked certain pre-construction services based on a spreadsheet we put together. And value engineering was not one of the ones that we asked them to provide for us.
Well, would it fall under perform a cursory review of architect's budget and offer comments?
That would be good.
Yeah, but that's not value engineering. That's not, that was just a cursory use budget, and they didn't do any in line by line detail. It was
What
not part of that.
did we get something from them?
No, we didn't get. We
Did
got,
they do that?
He did comments with the architect. They had a meeting, they sat down, they went over all of that together.
We paid them to sit down together and talk about it
Yes,
and not tell us about it? Like, what were their findings? What did they?
all the comments that Legacy made were part of what he said the last time that he was going to incorporate into his final proposals.
I'm sorry, I
He said
don't.
they were limited. Eli said, when the borough asked him what was left to be done, he said incorporate Legacy's comments into the plans, and the comments were minimal.
What were they?
I don't have them.
Does anybody else have them?
I mean, here's the thing, or cursory review of the architect's budget. I mean, I would assume that would be the intent is for cost savings, not to spend more money, or to see if it's on par with industry standards, things like that. And yeah,
But
it would be helpful to have.
But that work
Especially in
happened.
light of the conversations that we had with Eli during that one meeting.
Is there any work product from that? I mean,
I asked for a copy of the notes from that.
were you in the meeting?
No. I didn't attend, any of the meetings that the professionals have with each other, not with the site engineer, not
Okay.
with.
Well, when the owner's rep meets with the architect prior on the threshold of putting a multi-million-dollar project out to bid, I think it's a pretty good idea that we find out what that meeting was, what happened, what the work product was. We need a deliverable from Legacy if they sat down with the architect.
Have we paid them yet?
No.
So, and they haven't submitted a bill. And they're capped at 6.
66, I think.
Yeah.
I only got an update from on 6/22. Shared it with the, Mike and Chris and Josh. And he had a couple things that were still left to be done on that list.
So
Would it
let
be
me-
possible for us to get a copy of that?
I already requested.
Yeah, I would say consistent with that, their comment that they will offer comments on the bid documents and include them. I think we'd be interested to see whatever those comments are on the bid documents as well.
Especially
Specifically,
before they go out.
I would
Of
like to
course.
know, I would like Legacy to assess for us the cost advantages of putting the PD and the 2 PD alternates out independent of the DPW. I wanted an answer from Legacy about the potential cost savings.
Like the cost savings of separating all the documents?
Not physically separated, I'm sure that it would involve X's. I want an answer to that. I would assume that that would fall very neatly under this phase 1 assessment that they did with Eli,
Where would the cost savings come from?
preparing bid documents, and putting them out to bid. I'm not gonna say I know how to find the cost savings. I wanna know if
It's
there
actually
are.
gonna, what we've understood is it actually costs more to do what you're saying.
Well, let's say, Chris, you might be in some meetings that I'm not in.
Well, let's say that by having the professionals go and separate them out might
No.
actually end up costing us more.
That's
based on what-
possible. Let's
Based on
find
what
out.
they've told us.
Our owner's rep would be advocating for our best position,
course.
presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like them to let us know.
At the last meeting, I did ask a question, and I said, if we put them out to bid together, is it going to come back? Like if you buy a 1 pound bag of sugar and a 1 pound bag of sugar, let's say they're each $4 per bag. But if you buy a 2 pound bag of sugar, it's $3.50. So there's a cost savings
Mhm.
with combining required materials. But when and I asked this question and I was told they're going to be bid separate.
Because they're alternates. I'm
For
just talking
whatever
about the
reason,
cost, the
But they're not
administrative.
going to combine the products at a cost savings to us because we've already decided we're not building the DPW.
Correct.
All we want to know is like, just for our own knowledge.
Yes.
If we were ever to build it, what it would cost.
That's right.
And it would depend on when that were to occur.
Yeah.
But why would someone go to, it's expensive to bid out a project.
Understood.
And obviously, we're all over the internet. Everybody knows we're not going to bid it. So why would someone want to bid?
They may only bid the police department, but the administrative cost to separate those documents out is really what we were counseled not to incur.
Well,
And there's not gonna be a cost savings. Actually, it may cost us, that question might actually cost us under that agreement to
well,
find
since
out
we're
that answer.
already paying Legacy for some service that I believe this would fall within.
I don't know if it does.
Well, that's a good point. I'm not sure it does
Yeah.
either, except we're paying them for something. Let's get something. And I'm specifically interested in that answer, which is a reasonable request, given where we're at.
I think you can get that pretty quickly too. Yeah, that's a good thing.
We can move on from consent agenda.
Yes.
Right. Department reports, June 2022. Motion to accept the reports as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna move on to good of the borough. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience that has a good of the borough comment?
I just want everyone to be aware that the net alternates, especially at these dollar values, requires a great deal of analysis later on, because contractors with this size projects manipulate their bids such that their base bid will look low or look good because they manipulated the alternate such that when the other way around, say the DPW will look like it's a great price because the cost for that has been front loaded into the base bid of the project. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, I'm just saying with big projects and big alternates, it can happen. So there's a lot of technical analysis that has to go into reviewing the bids. It's not just as simple as looking at the number at the end, because you have to see how they arrived at the number for the base bid and how they arrived at the numbers for the alternates. Because it's very easy to manipulate the bids to give you a great looking alternate price because the numbers, the costs are hidden.
Bill,
just to word it.
did you say that you just retired and you have extra time on your hands?
You did.
We
got a job
We have
for
room
you.
for additional volunteers in this community.
I say that because we had a group of people, engineers and accounting people that analyzed that aspect of this. And I'm just not sure, I just fear that we're setting ourselves up to be bamboozled by contractors. These are not gonna be $2 million projects now. So this is a different, we've upped our game. This is not a mom and pop contractor that's gonna do this. This is gonna be bigger companies who know how to play the game. We don't know. So I just think we need to be on our game. If we've hired this
Yes.
owner's rep, maybe we do an addendum to his contract to make sure we pay him to analyze this. If that's his area, if that's within his area of expertise, we pay him to do that. I'm not sure what, based on Tracy, your question, I'm not sure what we bought in pre-bid services from this owner's rep. If we didn't get value engineering, didn't get for him to meet with an architect that we paid, wow.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else in the audience that has a comment for the borough? Teresa, is there
Yes.
anyone on the Zoom?
Yes. First person up is Teresa, no last name. Go ahead, Teresa, you can speak.
Hi, Teresa.
Teresa, can you unmute yourself and speak? She had changed her heart. We move on now to Liz McNeil. Teresa can raise her hand again. Go ahead, Liz.
Hey, Liz McNeil, 193rd Street. I heard you guys mention the 3rd Street paving project, but I couldn't quite catch it. Is it on track to be done this fall?
Not done. The bid has to be awarded by 11/21.
Okay, so it's just going out to bid this fall with the expectation of when would the work begin?
Rich?
Most likely, weather permitting, early spring, but then obviously we have to coordinate that with the schools and PD for the 3rd Street.
Okay, right. Okay, so we're looking at summer, basically early summer of next year. Okay, thanks. That's my only question.
Thank you, Liz.
And now we've got, I guess it's Ruth Blazer. Go ahead, Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to be sure that before they wrap up on Streetscape West, there's some kind of resolution to restoring my property to the way it was before. Because they tore up 45 years worth of plants and threw them on my front lawn, most of which are dead. I don't know how many bulbs survived, but I did keep them from putting any grass seed down in front of the hedges because I don't want to be pulling grass out if I have bushes and plants in there. So I just want to know that somebody is going to come and restore the front of my property.
Rich, I think I saw something that said they were working on the major components,
Yes.
tightening them up on the project, and then they're gonna go back to,
We're assembling punch lists now. We'll be meeting with the contractors probably this week to go over all that.
okay,
The goal is to get all the major stuff done.
and Ms. Blazer's, is she on the punch list?
I'm gonna do a whole walkthrough, but
For the whole thing?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Ruth,
I have
were you able to
another,
hear that?
I have another question regarding that. I'm not the only one, but people who come and visit me say, is your driveway narrower than it used to be? When they turn in off River Road, it appears to them that the driveway entrance is narrower than it was before they redid it.
We had one concern which we're addressing, but most of the issue was there was minimal or no curb face. So when people were actually turning into the driveway, they were kind of crossing over the sidewalk area in many areas, but.
Yeah,
we did put
exactly.
We did put standard width aprons.
Because I'm making now almost a 90-degree turn into my driveway, which is kind of weird on River Road since it's so busy and I have to swing out to make that 90-degree turn. Okay. In the spring, I mentioned that every year we have a problem with Schwenker's Pond, and it has started. It now has a lovely coating of slime on it. Are we ever going to do anything proactive about that not happening?
I would like to suggest that the Environmental Commission do an assessment of, conduct an assessment. That would be a professional service, so they could put it in their budget now, but I can certainly recommend that if this body feels that's something they're interested in. The Environmental Commission can look at any documents that have been prepared to date that touch on the state of our wetlands, ponds, creeks, and conservation corridors to understand the current status and if there are any maintenance guidelines. Very often there's maintenance plans. I don't know that we have one for that part of our community. But certainly the Environmental Commission would be the right body to work with our local professionals to come up with that.
Is this the same issue? Sorry.
I was gonna say that, I think that had been done maybe 2 years ago. So all we have to do is dust that off.
Is it the same issue as McCarter, or is it totally different?
All the ponds will carry a cover,
Yeah.
nitrogen fertilizer. Lawn fertilizer.
They had a proposal to put fountains there that were similar to the ones that are around site. And that they thought that would resolve the issue there. But that has.
Different than the fountains, different than the, I don't know if those are called fountains that are at McCarter Pond now.
Area.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's a deeper water, so it'd be more like
Okay.
it's Humphreys
Bigger.
Pond, could be a little bit more
Do you
effective.
want me to bring this up at the Environmental Commission so they can put on their agenda and get back to the governing body with at least a status of what we know?
Sure, I think they already have something.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth.
And I have a question, just a question on information. When you do things like letter the municipal vehicles or put logos on or put up the sign that says welcome to Fairhaven or pick out street lights and things like that, who does that?
Police department.
We have a problem vendor.
The reason being, I hadn't noticed, well, until you did Streetscape West, that you'd put in new street lamps. And I looked at them and I absolutely laughed because the top of them looked like World War I German army helmets. I mean, it just struck me exceedingly funny. And I don't think they match the ones at Streetscape East.
They are different. Rich,
Yeah.
I know I asked you about this.
Different
so I addressed it.
manufacturer.
You were not able to get the same.
Correct.
Is
They
it
don't-
possible that down the line, the old streetscape East fixtures could be fitted with something to match the Streetscape West fixtures atop?
Possibly, but you also have some JCP&L fixtures mixed in from this building to Oak Place. So they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
all- They're not all Fairhaven fixtures.
Yeah. So essentially, the DPW or the administration picks out stuff.
What was that? What was that
Okay.
last?
I said, so basically the DPW or the administration is the one who sits down and picks out the designs or whatever, the colors or whatever.
Not me.
Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
It should be done with just to, so you have some response. I think it's important to make those decisions thoughtfully. All those appurtenances are help to make up the character of the corridor and it matters. So
It was a supply chain thing where they're not available, they just don't manufacture them anymore.
the first streetscape was done in 2005, so over the years,
They
things have changed a little bit.
changed the design. You got it. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else, Teresa?
Marty Yeager,
Hi, Marty.
go ahead, Marty.
Hi, thanks. All right, so we started with an animal issue and I'm going to go back to an animal issue, starting with a C, but mine isn't chickens, it's cats. It's really, I have a stray cat that's had 4 kittens and I have tried everything I can possibly try to get these cats trapped, neutered, you know, whatever the program is. So I've heard from the SPCA, and I don't know who knows what about our relationship with the SPCA and the programs, but apparently the SPCA does have a program called TNR, Trap, Neuter, and Release. And if a town, I guess there's a cost involved for participating in that program, but if a town does participate in that program, the SPCA will come out and trap the, you know, whatever animal or issue that you have. However, Fairhaven, I found out, does not participate. And I have a dilemma. I'm not asking you to solve it, but I certainly am not able to solve it. And I'm trying to prevent having 40 cats running around the neighborhood within the next few months, because I don't think my neighbors would enjoy that either. But I'm really out of options at this point, and I didn't know if you could give me any information on that program that we don't participate in.
Can you feed them cat birth control?
Marty, I think we should line up Amelia Cole for you. I do, and she and I know some people at the ASPCA. I don't know anything about the program, but I don't know if it's something we should add. I'm not even gonna speak to that, but we could keep.
1-800
We only had one
Cole.
other issue with feral cats. It was years ago.
Yeah.
In a neighbor put off a third, and our animal control officer had dealt with it at the time. But this is the first I'm hearing of this. I certainly can ask the SPCA about the program and see what kind of costs is involved.
I'm pretty familiar with it. So we have an average, we had a big feral cat problem in my town, and also they do it in Red Bank as well. So long story short, you basically join the program, they pay a flat fee, you get a certain number of cats, and if you exceed that cat, it's per cat. So obviously for the vet services, and that's pretty much it. And they trap and they release them, and then eventually the population. Long story short, I learned a lot about cats when we had cats everywhere in a couple of neighborhoods in Aberdeen as councilman. And so cats are predatory, they're territorial predators. So the issue is not really the cats, it's people feed the cats and then they come around. So you take the cats away, if the food source is there, more cats just move into the area. So taking cats away and destroying them is really not the way to control a feral cat population. It's to make sure they don't reproduce. And then over time, you basically have a healthy cat population that eats basically the rats and things in the area. And hopefully you don't have people feeding that will attract too many cats. But ultimately, the SPCA, it's a more humane way of controlling the cat population. And it's frankly more effective than just removing the cats and then they're replaced by more cats from the next town 4 months later.
Is it the Humane Society or ASPCA?
It's the SPCA that does it. And they charge, at least all the contracts I've seen with other towns, they charge you a flat fee and they'll accept a certain number of cats and then it's a per cat fee after that. I can't imagine you go past the flat fee, yeah. Unless you have a real problem. But that's functionally how it works. You can enter into a contract with them separate from animal control. They basically do it as a service. The only question is whether I believe the ASPCA covers, I'm almost positive they cover this area. Like, for example, they won't go to Western Monmouth like Roosevelt wanted to bring them back.
They told me that they would come.
No, even better. I'm sure they'll add on to your current plan.
Marty, what did you say?
I'm sorry, the SPCA just told me that it's town by town, whichever town signs up for the program is eligible. And they're very happy to come and trap the animals and neuter them and release them, as our attorney was saying, you know, that that will control the population. But because we didn't sign up for it, I had no idea when this might have been offered to the town. I have no idea how expensive it is, and maybe that's why we didn't join. But in the meantime, I'm just going crazy.
I remember being an option or like an alternate.
Any complaints about feral cats?
No, but I also don't think it was offered with the contract that was offered to us as an alternate or like an additional fee, got, 50 cats neutered or something. But I think it's worth looking into to see what the incremental cost might be.
Marty, we will look into it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So I'm taking care of my turkey vultures with a super soaker water gun, but other than that, it's the cats.
Turkey vultures.
Marty, they get the
Cats, chickens.
The ASPCA is not off of
vultures.
that.
No.
No, Marty, let's see that.
Thank you, Marty.
Check on you.
Okay.
Bring my baseball. I don't have any other hands raised at this
No
time.
other
so-
hands raised?
Hey, real quick, I get cats out of the trees for them all the time, right? So I brought about 20 cats over there, called the box cats, and they neuter them, they never charge me nothing. And they, you know what, they bring them back to the same town and release them. So.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
And no one else to reason?
No, sir.
Okay. With that being said, we're going to move to executive session. Formal action will not be taken, 10:42 p.m. Does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Greg, Lisa. It's over. It's 10 in the morning.
5 hours of Pilates.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
Greg. I got you.
I did. I wanted to ask you a question. I can text you if you want to, so.
I apologize.
I know, I'm sorry. I could text you. I have a sticky here to ask you something. I knew I'd forget. I'll work out with you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Drive safe. Night, Tracy.
Good job for the evening. Thank you, Teresa. Good night.
25, all the way back to 33.
No, I got to recording off now. Sorry.